Hello and welcome to Six Pack. Today I'm going to start a new series. What if Deku and Ochaco got married and became the strongest hero couple? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and watch more videos like this. Subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Despite what happened approximately 10 years ago, when the country was experiencing its most recent crisis of hero and villain activity, a secret laboratory remains in a discreet and secret location somewhere in the island nation of Japan. However, given the dissolution of the League and the criminal overlord All for One in Japan, one might question whose laboratory this is. It is the neglected lab of Dr. Kyudai Garaki, the League of Villains' mad scientist and the right-hand man and closest follower of All for One. The malevolent scientist had somehow escaped from captivity and fled into hiding amid all of the reconstruction that Japan underwent after the war. At the moment, the evil lunatic was reading a newspaper from the comfort of his lab chair, snarling whenever the names Deku or Izuku Midoriya were mentioned. A collaborative photo of Class 1A graduates and young heroes who took part in the fight against All for One was featured as the headline on the first page. The title said, "Popularity polls show that new heroes are soaring. Deku leads the latest survey." Anger bubbling over, a vein bulged atop his bald head before he ripped the paper apart and threw it aside. He tossed it in the same location as other newspapers he had read. Then, with a furious yell, he turned to his table and slammed it with both hands. "Damn it! Damn it! Damn it!" he yelled. "How could things have turned out like this? Is fate just mocking me at this point? All the efforts of my master in the League, undone like that?" Garaki's blood pressure was rising, so he quickly clenched his chest and let out long, frustrated pants in an effort to calm down. However, there had been a particular moment in his life that kept coming back to him. "Sorry kid. It's not gonna happen." He determined that 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya was incapable of exhibiting a quirk of his own while he was still performing his duties as chairman of the Jaku Hospital Board. The child's self-esteem was severely damaged, even though this moment had been ordinary for him at first. Nevertheless, it was this same boy who defeated All for One and ultimately led him to his demise, as if karma had finally returned to haunt him. Izuku had become the deeply ingrained source of Garaki's anger and hatred after he learned about what had transpired while he was incarcerated. The recurrence of this memory made him angry every time. "If only I knew what would have followed, I would have begged All for One to make that twerp his new vessel. Not that ungrateful little traitor, Shigaraki, but how was I supposed to expect him to meet All Might of all people?" he yelled, cradling his head. A big fluid-filled pod next to the insane doctor reflected his face off its glass. A dark being with a human-like physique, long white hair, and flickering black embers that seemed to be floating in suspended animation was inside. Garaki's face lit up with a sickening smile at the creature inside. The doctor, putting aside his rage, walked over and eyed the creature, pressing his hand against the glass. "But soon, we'll bring about not just the complete annihilation of that brat, Deku, but the entire world will be under our thumb." He chuckled demonically. "Your dreams will not be on deaf ears, Master. And all the efforts I wasted on the League of Villains will be put to better use." The creature's eyes slowly opened from inside the pod, revealing bright red pupils staring back. The New Age of Heroes. My Hero Part 1. Midoriya's Typical Day. Japan's Musutafu simultaneously, under the bright skies above, a massive car crash was reported as a result of someone's quirk suddenly losing control, which was now causing chaos for everyone present. Due to the wreckage or their fear of escaping the quirk user, many passengers were still confined to their vehicles. The quirk user was depicted as a massive 4-armed giant who became uncontrollable because of the traffic. While one squad tried to stall the suspect, several police officers worked to rescue the trapped victims. With a savage roar, he suddenly seized a car with both of its enormous hands and pawed it straight at the police. As the cars crashed and smashed to the ground, an officer yelled, "Move!" and his squad managed to avoid the flying vehicles. At that moment, the giant roared and seized a nearby school bus that still had the driver and students on board. As the bus was raised into the air and hung over his head, they all let out terrified screams. However, just as he was about to toss it, a lone figure rushed onto the scene and lunged directly at the giant. Wearing a flowing yellow cape and a mechanized battlesuit, Izuku pulled back his left hand, clenching his fist. Saying, "Detroit Smash," he slammed the giant's face. The blow was so powerful that the giant stumbled backward after losing control of the bus and dropping it on its side. Simultaneously, another hero showed up and eliminated the bus's overall gravity using her quirk. Ochaco was the hero who caused it to slowly rotate in the absence of gravity before landing on its tires. As the driver opened the door and the students started rushing out, she ran over. As they hurried by, Ochaco exclaimed, "Whoa, whoa, everybody calm down. Is anybody hurt?" Ochaco caught the driver as he rushed out, almost stumbling over his own feet. He sighed with relief. His body trembled as he stammered, "Thank you so much, don't worry. I'll keep an eye on the kids." Ochaco gave a nod. Before releasing him, she said, "Okay. Thanks." Izuku was still fighting the four-armed giant at the same moment. The hero was able to dodge the monstrous brute's punches or leap over his enormous arms each time. Izuku came at him with a roundhouse kick to his face after attempting another attack without success. Ochaco called, "Deku. You need any help?" she said. Izuku took a moment to give Ochaco a quick glance and a thumbs up. "It's okay, Uravity, I got this. Please help the officers with those still trapped," he said. She smiled confidently and nodded. The giant charged at him, enraged, and he turned back. He launched another massive fist at him, but Izuku took advantage of the opportunity to stop and grab hold of his arm, stopping him in his tracks. Izuku cried out, "See, calm down. You're not in control of yourself. If you can hear me, then, stand down." The monster continued to growl until it finally released Izuku's hold and launched him into the air. Ochaco gasped when he saw him. "Deku!" she exclaimed. Suddenly, however, Siro's arrival shot a long strand of sticky tape from the ground below, snagging Izuku's arm. Before Shoji, who was standing next to Siro, caught him, he yanked Izuku back toward the ground. "Are you okay?" Shoji inquired. "We just arrived ourselves." Izuku moaned and thanked his friends before getting up. He snarled as he turned to face the giant, who was still glaring at him. "We might have to overpower or subdue him before he gets out of control," Siro remarked. "Something tells me he's not in the mood to talk things out, Midoriya." At that moment, a series of explosions could be heard overhead, and then another hero appeared. When he was close enough, he launched a huge explosion directly at the giant, sending him reeling backward. Bakugo, Izuku's rival and childhood friend, arrived shortly after, dressed as a hero. "Kei-Kachan," called Izuku. Bakugo moaned and glared over his shoulder. "Damn it, Deku. How hard is it for you to use my hero name? Call me Dynamite when we're working, you damn nerd," he yelled. The giant roared again and lunged for Bakugo from behind, arms outstretched. However, as his hand flashed bright red, preparing for another huge explosive attack, he swiftly turned back. He roared, "Go to sleep, you damn idiot," and fired another enormous blast at close range. The others braced themselves as the blast was powerful enough to send a huge shockwave across the landscape. The giant had been knocked unconscious by Bakugo's attack, and its eyes had gone white before it fell backwards. Tomorrow, while Izuku, now dressed more casually for the streets, sat in a restaurant with some of his friends, newscasters discussed and covered the entire crisis that day. Bakugo was seated next to him at their table, while Jiro and Kaminari were seated across from them. Perched in the upper corner of the dining floor, Jiro groaned heavily as he watched the footage on the TV. She shook her head and muttered, "God damn it, Bakugo. What happened to you toning things back when it came to handling criminals?" Kaminari asked, laughing as she rubbed her forehead. He added, "He just has a really short fuse. I'm thankful he didn't reduce that car pileup into a crater." Bakugo snarled, slamming the table with one hand while crushing his drink cup in the other. "What were you expecting, Jiro? He's always been that way since we first met in school." He yelled in utter rage, "Shut up. I was restraining myself. I was." But unable to comprehend, Jiro just rubbed her temples. Izuku watched anxiously, keeping quiet so as not to agitate him anymore. Izuku turned to his friends in an attempt to shift the conversation, and he saw the gold and silver rings on Kaminari's and Jiro's fingers. Now hanging over Jiro's shoulders, Kaminari wore his on the same arm. Jiro and Kaminari gasped a little and looked at Izuku as he said, "Anyway, it's really great that you guys are back. How was your trip out to Europe?" She smiled as she recalled the concert Jiro had hoped to see. Well, we had a lot of fun. The hotel we were at was very accommodating, the people were friendly, and, yeah, we just had a good time," she replied. When Kaminari saw Jiro's eyes shift to him, he actually blushed a little. He gave his cheek a light scratch. "We had to do something fun for our 2-year anniversary. Am I wrong?" he continued. "We should really be thanking Yaoyorozu's family for offering to pay for the tickets. They weren't exactly cheap." Jiro concurred. "Still, The fact that you guys have been dating for 2 years now, hey, that's a real accomplishment in its own way. Izuku continued. Jiro glanced at Kaminari's hand, and then she started to flush too. Yeah. Who would have thought? She murmured, earphone jack and chargeable. The hottest trend when it came to hero power couples that year. But I'm not complaining. She turned to face Kaminari, who became agitated at the sight of her smile, and thanked him for being a way cool boyfriend. He made an effort to hide his true emotions and come off as inconsequential. Bakugo turned to look at Izuku. In a boastful tone, he remarked, "At least you're dating better than this dork." "Right, Izuku?" Leaning casually in his seat, Izuku gasped and glanced at his friend. What's that supposed to mean, Kachan?" he exclaimed, his face flushed. With a sigh, his friend gestured directly at him. Izuku froze when he exclaimed, "You know what I mean, dumbass. When are you going to finally grow some balls and tell her you're in love? It's obvious as all hell that you liked her, even when we first started going to UA, but here you are, Mr. Number 1, too scared to even be legit with his feelings. Have my words not been drilled into your head yet?" Izuku was reduced to a stuttering mess as he repeatedly failed to come up with the best response to Bakugo's insult. However, Kaminari burst out laughing. He snarled, his eyes bulging and his teeth grinding, mockingly, "You say Midoriya has romance issues? You haven't even tried? Like you're one to talk, Bakugo. I seem to recall you not having anyone either. Anytime one of your fangirls try getting close, you flip and threaten to blast them. You can't even nail a sidekick yet," he said proudly. "Say that again, idiot. Say that again and see what happens," he yelled, frightening Kaminari as sparks started to form in his palm. Jiro looked at Izuku as they continued their argument, and he looked back in silence. "As much as I want to disagree, Bakugo kind of has a point. Take it from me, Midoriya. If you really like Uraraka, you should tell her to her face, unless you're willing to lose her to someone else," she continued. "Now would be the best time to ask her, especially with her folks living better." Izuku continued to be quiet before lightly nodding. Well, funny you should say that. Uraraka said she wanted me to meet her a little later today. Maybe I'll try and bring it up then. Thanks for the support, Jiro." Sometime later, Izuku was rushing to meet Ochaco at their agreed-upon location after leaving the restaurant and his companions. He eventually reached Ochaco, who was leaning against a building, as he ran down the street, trying to avoid the passing cars and other people. When she first saw him, she was dressed casually, just like him. She waved her hand joyfully. She called, "Deku. There you are." Izuku stopped beside her, pausing to take a deep breath. "Hey, Uraraka. Sorry if I kept you waiting. I didn't want to use my battlesuit, unless it was an emergency," he apologized. Uraraka laughed in return. She said, "Don't worry. I only got here a little while ago myself. Thanks again for agreeing to meet up, Deku. Our hero work makes meetings like this a rare opportunity. Know what I mean?" Izuku nodded and laughed with her. Looking at the sign above him, he said, "Speaking of which, can you explain why you wanted to meet here of all places? Wouldn't a spa visit be better spent with someone like your mom? Or perhaps Yaoyorozu?" He turned back to her as she surprised him by putting her left hand against his cheek and rubbing the scar there. The injury was a souvenir of the last conflict with the League of Villains and all for one. Ochaco had a gentle smile on his face that captured Izuku's entire focus. She took his hand in hers and examined the numerous wounds on his fingers and palm before responding softly, "This isn't really for me. It's more so a gift for you, Izuku." He gasped as she said, "One of the masseuses that works here has a quirk that has made this place extremely popular. Her quirk allows her to boost the recovery of flesh wounds, even removing all traces of their existence. I know you'd probably say these are reminders of your time mastering One for All. But, now that the embers have faded away, and you're not at risk of harming yourself with your own quirk, don't you think it's all right to treat these properly?" she said. Izuku stared back at him with a genuinely worried expression, but she was utterly silent and unable to speak. After a while, he gave a small sigh and returned her smile. "Maybe, you're right. I'll give it a shot," he replied. Ochaco grinned. "If I can be somewhat blunt, I miss the smiling face of that remarkably normal guy the first met when I went to UA, and I'd like to see it again," she continued. Then, without another word, the two walked through the sliding doors, side by side. Izuku is peacefully lying on the massage board inside the guest-only private massage room while Ochaco observes from a nearby couch. He was wearing a pair of white shorts and had taken off his shirt, exposing his scars on his hands and upper body. Before the masseuse entered, Ochako watched with a worried expression on her face. The voice of a woman said, "I apologize for keeping you both waiting." They looked at her as she walked up to Izuku. She was a middle-aged woman with short black hair and a casual kimono. She gasped after glancing at his numerous scars. "Oh, wow. Miss Uravati wasn't joking. You truly must have suffered when you were overusing your power, Mr. Deku. Even so, I thank you for all you did for us during those dark hours. If it weren't for you and the other heroes, I don't think we'd still be here," she replied, bowing respectfully to him. Izuku laughed. "It's a small price to pay if it meant making sure we all had a future to look towards," he replied casually. Izuku was asked to turn over by the masseuse, who positioned herself beside him. As she started working on his upper muscles, he nodded and crossed his arms beneath his head to signal his pillow. Although it took some time for the effects of her massage to become apparent, Izuku appeared to be very at ease and let out a deep sigh after he was fully at ease. With a silly smile, he said, "Woo. I don't think I ever got a massage that felt this good before." Ochako laughed and took a picture of his face with her phone before he saw. As the massage continued, he fell asleep due to the overwhelming feeling of relaxation. One day, while having lunch in the park with the elderly retired Toshinori, a previous conversation quickly came back to him. You want to know what the best way is to tell Uraraka you love her? Yeah. It's been something I can't seem to get right, no matter how much I practice ahead of time. You must have had a lot more experience dealing with ladies admitting they loved you, right, All Might? Ha 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 hey. Young Midoriya, I might have been the biggest celebrity in Hero Society when I was in my prime, but even I don't have the answers to everything. I'm afraid I'm not the best person to talk to. I know. Why not ask Shoto? He's quite popular when it comes to the ladies. NNGH. If I went to Shoto about this, I'd be way too embarrassed. This is super personal. Heh. Well, I don't know what made you think talking with me was the better choice. But I may have some words that might help. Huh? What? What is it? Just be yourself, young man. Use the time you've spent with her during your time together at UA and just naturally apply it in future opportunities you get. If you just follow what your heart says, then just like how you mastered One for All, you'll be able to reach her. Thanks, All Might. No problem. Also, you know you don't have to keep calling me All Might, right? I am retired. Doh. I can't believe I let it slip out again. As he slowly awoke from his massage, his eyelids still feeling heavy, Toshinori's laugh reverberated in his mind. Uraraka was reading from a magazine when he first noticed her, and then she noticed his eyes. She teased, "Hey sleepyhead. How was your nap?" Izuku gave a loud yawn and got up from the table. "You slept through the entire process. She finished a while ago, but I guess you needed the extra beauty sleep." Ochako went on. Izuku asked her if she had a mirror on her after gasping and recalling what had happened earlier. She gestured to a full-body mirror nearby and allowed his reflection to respond on his behalf. He was astounded by what he saw when he looked in the mirror. The freckles under his eye had returned, and the big scar that had previously covered his upper left arm and the wound on his face had miraculously disappeared. He put his hand to his cheek and rubbed it, still in disbelief. Ochako returned his clothes to him, leaving no sign of the damage to his skin. No way. This is amazing. It's like it was all a dream," he murmured. "See? I knew this was a chance worth taking. Look at yourself. You have your adorable face back," she responded. Ochako abruptly realized what Izuku had said and slapped her hands over her mouth, blushing just as much as Izuku. What are you thinking, Ochako? Why'd you say that?" she was thinking. He said, "Hey, what was that?" She became frightened and started wildly waving her arms around when she noticed he was looking in her direction. "I didn't mean it like that. I meant, yeah, you'll look a lot more photogenic next time someone asks for a photo. That's it, you know," she cried, utterly agitated. Izuku began to chuckle, trying not to laugh out loud. "That's quite the compliment, Uraraka. Thank you though," he chuckled. She soon began to laugh too, erasing a tear from her eye as his contagious laugh swept over her. Izuku's heart skipped a beat at the sight of her broad smile, his emotions overwhelming him once more. He started to extend his arm in her direction as she kept laughing. But he lowered it back to his side, sensing that this was not the right moment. Some time later, after getting dressed once more, Izuku and Ochako left the spa and walked and talked about their past together for the rest of the afternoon. After their stroll, they ended up sharing a table at a nearby restaurant for dinner. He touched his smooth cheek again. Thanks again, Uraraka, for today. I know my mom is going to be over the moon when I next see her, he replied. You don't have to thank me, but if you insist, then I'm gonna hold you to it. If we end up getting dessert, I'm going to get whatever I want, no matter how much. You can repay me by offering to pay. She joked. I already paid for your massage. Izuku laughed lightly. Okay then. I think I can manage that, he responded. Ochako told Izuku she was kidding while laughing. Their orders were brought to their table by the waiter, who placed them there. He started to recall his conversation with Toshinori as he observed Ochako conversing with the waiter. Would NOW be the best time to tell her? I mean, a lot of couples usually do so in those movies. Or, wait, isn't that just a greatly overused trope? Izuku snapped back to reality as Ochako picked up her cutlery. Maybe I should hold off until after dinner. I mean, I don't want to embarrass her when there's so many people here. If any of them happen to be reporters, who boy? Ochako said, looks good. What do you think, Izuku? Izuku nodded back, looking down at his steak. Izuku led them into another discussion by saying, it looks like a place Momo would definitely come to. Oh, speaking of which, did you know Kaminari and Jiro got back from their trip recently? The one Momo's parents helped pay for? They spent the remainder of their time together catching up, enjoying delicious food, and spending time together. After the night was over, Izuku was a little frustrated to discover that he had once again blown the opportunity to express his feelings to Ochako. Tomorrow, the following day, she had just finished getting ready before leaving in her hero costume at Ochako's house. After adjusting her headpiece, she looked at herself in the mirror once more. She saw her mother approaching her as she was leaving. Oh, before you leave, Ochako, there's something I wanted to ask you. Do you have a second? She inquired. She nodded despite having her hand on the doorknob. She said, sure mom. What's up? Her mom gave her a small smile. It's not a big deal or anything, but I forgot to ask you how your date with Izuku was last night. You came home with a pleasant smile on your face, so I can only imagine you finally let the boy know you like him, she said. Sweat raced down Ochako's face as she abruptly froze, her pupils contracting and her eyes widening. Mom. About last night, she uttered in a monotone. Ochako was even more ashamed when her mother shook her head and sighed lightly before she could finish. Really, Ochako? You don't have to keep holding it in any longer. I know you work hard as a hero to provide for your father and me. We already have plenty of money now, especially since we were endorsed by the Hero Public Safety Commission after you graduated. But, I'm worried that you're doing all this at the cost of your own happiness, she continued, placing her hand on her cheek. Ochako relaxed, though her face was still very red. Even if you only start out as your own hero team, it's okay to rely on others. Amazing things can happen when people come together with those they care for. Remember? She asked, causing her child to gasp. She recalled the anguish and suffering she endured because she held herself responsible for Toga's death, as well as the time she spent with Izuku following All for One's loss. Since then, Izuku's words have been replayed in her mind. Ochako, holding a hand can be enough to soothe the pain. You're my hero. Today, I really wanted to talk to you more, Uraraka. And not just today, from now on too. She started to cry, but she quickly wiped them away. Sorry, Mom. I guess, when it comes to love, I need a little more courage, but, don't worry. If you and Dad are backing me up, I'll definitely be able to tell him, she responded with a confident nod. Her mother gave her a hug after grinning. She patted her back and said, that's my Ochako. After that, she let her go, and Ochako made a powerful leap across the city using float. Before turning off her quirk, she landed close to the downtown intersection. She realized at that moment that Mina Ishido was staring at her with her arms crossed and that someone had seen her touchdown. With a disappointed expression on her face, she tapped her foot impatiently. Before Ishido rushed to her, she waved, oh, good morning, Pinky. How are? She glared at her angrily and pouted at her. Ochako was reluctant to respond. She growled and stammered out, Oshak-ku. Why didn't? How could, before she began to laugh and bob Ochako's head. Dummy. Dummy 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 dummy. Ochako seized Mina's wrists. Whoa. Calm down. Why are you pummeling me? She said. Ishido pouted once more. Why? Why did you botch things up again? You had Midoriya in the palm of your hands and, just like the other times, you didn't seal the deal. You're just a complete moron. Ishido yelled. Before going to bed last night, Ochako suddenly realized that she had texted the others about their day together, Sharing that she was unable to confess, she quickly understood Mina's angry expression. I swear you are hopeless. Do you want some other girl to swipe Midoriya before you stop dragging your feet? Ashido went on. He might be as dense as you when it comes to romance, but you're driving me nuts with how long you're taking. Ochako let out a sigh. Ribbit. Why did I know this was going to happen first thing? Sue responded. Both girls gasped and turned to see Froppy, dressed in her hero suit, glued to the building's wall. Before pushing them apart, she leapt down between them. She turned to Ochako and said, Ashido, leave Uraraka alone. We've known each other since school and you should have expected this by now. Let her do things her own way, Ribbit. Ashido moaned and turned her head away, muttering to herself that Sue was not supporting her position. At that moment, Ochako's helmet-mounted earpiece buzzed a couple of times. She touched her ear with her hand. She pressed a button down after saying, hold on a second. Uravati, come in. Are you there, Deku? What's wrong? Is there a crisis? We've got a wounded child laying in the intersection by UA. He was trying to stop a truck from hitting another bystander but took the hit in his place and he's losing blood fast. We could use your quirk to help get him into an ambulance ASAP. Oh, on my way. Hang on, Mina said. Hey, what's up, Ochako? With her fingertips glowing momentarily, Ochako turned away and applied her quirk once more to herself. They both gasped as she leapt off again into the blue skies, leaving them to watch from below. Deku needs my help. A child was caught in a traffic accident and he's bleeding out, she exclaimed. I gotta go, sorry Ashido. We're going to have continue this later, she said. Everyone in the vicinity could see the tragic event unfolding all over the city. A young boy with white hair had been thrown down the road after being struck by a big transport truck. The boy was seriously injured, and both the police and an ambulance were on the scene. The child had a concussion from the impact, and his face was nearly completely covered in blood. He had heavy eyelids that were straining to keep his eyes open. However, he was gradually losing consciousness due to the pain, and his hearing was also getting worse. The sounds all around him were blending together. Child. Crying aloud, tears streaming down his cheeks. Driver. Officers, I swear, I took a second's glance away. I was surprised that the child would. Mother of the child. Oh my dear, I'm so glad you're okay. First paramedic. He's drowning. Hello, keep going, little one. Paramedic number 2. Is there anyone who knows whose kid this is? If you do, please speak up. He saw someone else arrive at the scene as he was about to faint, but he couldn't tell who it was. It was Deku, who had just arrived in his battlesuit. After scanning the accident scene quickly, he hurried over to see the injured child. One paramedic. Deku. Deku. Shock. Hello. Do you hear me? Hold on, Uravati. Presses an earpiece, enter now, are you present? Izuku was calling for Uraraka's assistance when the child blacked out, unable to bear the agony any longer. His heartbeat was the only sound he could hear at this point. Sometime later, after about half a day had gone by since the accident, Uravati's float and Deku's lightweight helped safely transfer the child into the ambulance, which hurried him to Jaku Hospital. The boy was lying still in a hospital bed as the sun was starting to set outside the windows. He had an IV in his arm, bandages covering his head and other wounds, and his face had been cleaned of blood. Even though he was unconscious, his ears managed to pick up some important speech cues. He's lost a lot of blood, doctor. I'm not sure whether we'll have enough time to arrange for a transfusion. Deku. I'm sorry, doctor. His blood type is O, right? Nurse. Why yes. Deku. Then, please, give my blood to him. I'm the same kind, it shouldn't take very long. Uravati. Deku B, but he's already lost a lot, says the doctor. Deku. Please. I wish to assist him. Even a slim chance of survival is something he deserves. All right, doctor. Light gasp. Thank you, Midoriya. If it's your blood, perhaps we can work a miracle. The light from the setting sun filtered through the adjacent room, and the clock in his hospital room read 5:47 p.m. Alongside him were people like Ochako and Izuku, as well as an additional guest. Eri sat by the boy's side, resting her hand on his chest and administering tiny doses of rewind to aid in his recuperation. Even though a long time had gone by, the boy's eyes gradually started to open again, demonstrating the effort that everyone had put in. His eyes were a vivid shade of hazel, and he could hear Izuku and Eri talking as his hearing returned. Eri exclaimed, "Oh, he's waking up." Ochako and Izuku both let out heavy sighs. Thank goodness. You really are a miracle worker, Eri, he replied. The boy's gaze gradually moved to Deku, who was dressed casually, but had a piece of bandage wrapped around his right arm, which was a clear sign of the transfusion process. Before long, Ochaco and Izuku both looked at him. Ochaco rubbed his head and said, "Hey, you feeling any better?" With a groan, the boy turned back to Izuku after surveying his surroundings. "If you're wondering, you're at Jaku Hospital. The doctors had to do a blood transfusion while you were unconscious. They weren't sure if you were going to make it. But, you're a real trooper," he continued. Ochaco nodded and added that according to the police, witnesses reported that he was attempting to prevent another child from being struck. Izuku went on, "You have the heart of a hero, just like All Might." However, the child's face continued to display a confused expression. The others gasped as the boy whispered, "Where is my brother? What happened? Brother? Wait. Did the police say anything about his family?" Eri responded. Izuku gave a headshake. The mother of the other child said she didn't know him. No one else recognized him either, Ochaco stated. "You mean his parents weren't anywhere to be seen?" replied Eri. The boy attempted to slowly get out of bed, but Eri's rewind prevented him from suffering any severe physical harm. Even so, Ochaco cautioned him against making eye contact with Izuku. "I heard someone's voice earlier. Was that you?" asked the man. Izuku initially appeared perplexed before they both took a quick look at his bandaged arm. He responded, "Ah, right. We probably haven't been introduced yet. My name's Izuku Midoriya, a licensed pro hero that was there to help. But, you can call me by my hero name, Deku." Ochaco then introduced herself, adding that she was named Uravati, before introducing Eri. "Oh, yeah. The doctors transferred my blood to you. You probably heard my voice during the procedure. My name's Kazuto. Mr. Deku," the boy said, tears starting to form in his eyes. Thank you so much. You saved my life." Izuku gave him a gentle smile and put his hand on top of his head. "It's okay. That's just what heroes do," he continued. "You should take it easy and let your body recover. We won't be going anywhere anytime soon." Izuku was staring at Ochaco. "But, what about his family? I didn't hear any confirmation about his family until he mentioned a brother," she replied. Everyone gasped in shock as Kazuto appeared to be struck hard by those words, and he began to cry more. This time, though, he was trying to suppress it. He sobbed as he said, My parents, they abandoned the two of us, all because we were born quirkless." As he recalled his mother consoling him and then him asking All Might his question, Izuku gasped and his eyes shook. "Can I become a hero even if I don't have a quirk? I'm just a regular kid with no special abilities. Is it possible for me to aspire to be like you?" Eri's mouth just hung open as Ochaco, completely shaken, covered her mouth. She started experiencing flashbacks to the event that resulted in her birth mother abandoning her and ultimately falling into Overhaul's grasp. "That's horrible," exclaimed Ochaco. As Izuku went on with his tale, his eyes became stern. "Since we were 6, me and my brother have been living on the streets. Then, He goes missing and I try to find him, leading me to saving a total stranger that I thought was him. I can't believe I almost died for nothing." Kazuto cried out. Izuku came over right away, knelt beside his bed, and put his arms around him. As soon as Kazuto felt Izuku's embrace, his eyes grew wide. "Izuku!" cried Eri. Unable to comprehend what was happening, he started massaging the back of his head with his hand, causing the boy's tears to trail down his cheeks. However, he was unable to resist holding onto Izuku's clothing from behind. Izuku whispered, "It'll be okay. I'll help you find your brother. I swear, both of you boys are going to be okay. I promise." As Kazuto slowly turned to face him, there was a knock on the door. "Don't look down on your accomplishments, Kazuto. You saved that child's life, even if it meant getting hurt yourself. You are amazing." The elderly Toshinori and another man wearing a medical jacket entered. The man wore under-rim glasses, a beard, and short, sleek brown hair. Bags of fast food takeout intended for Izuku and the others were in Toshinori's hands. "Hey, Midoriya. Sorry I was late. Not only was the place crowded, but I also ran into this gentleman when I arrived. He said he was looking for you, I think," Toshinori clarified. As the two separated from the embrace, the doctor walked over to Izuku. Izuku shook the doctor's hand and Toshinori took his place at the boy's side. "Pardon me. I don't mean to intrude, but you're Izuku Midoriya, correct?" he said. holding out his hand. My name is Dr. Takeda Takashi, a specialist in the study of quirk evolution theories. I've wanted to meet you for a long time now. Hello. I'm Izuku, all right, but you can call me Deku. Is there something I can help you with? Said he. Takashi turned back to Izuku after glancing at the boy in the bed. Well, I can see you must be busy with this young man. But if you can spare a few minutes, can we talk in the hallway? Asked the man. Izuku turned to look at his friends, then noticed Toshinori nodding to him. He replied, sure. Let's talk outside. As Toshinori distributed the food to the others, he followed Takashi outside. Shortly after Izuku shut the door, Takashi cleared his throat and went on. Deku, I was out of Japan when the League of Villains overtook the country, doing research into the evolution of quirks of American citizens. I wasn't able to come back to the country until after the rebuilding was completed and the airlines opened again. He continued, but I will say that I do know about the efforts and contributions you gave to the heroes when faced with an overwhelming evil such as All for One. It was all over the news channels from the hotel I was staying at and, well, your quirk, One for All, greatly sparked my curiosity. Izuku exclaimed with a slight sigh. Well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I no longer have One for All. I destroyed my quirk in order to defeat All for One, to save Japan and those I cared for. The embers are long gone as well. He continued. At first, Dr. Takashi appeared a little shaken, taking a moment to reflect before turning back to Izuku. He fell silent once more and said, I see. I had no idea, it worked that way. Izuku apologized for dashing his hopes and nodded. However, he looked back when the doctor abruptly placed his hand on his shoulders. But I can work with this. Oh, sorry. I mean, Mr. Midoriya. What if I said the fruits of my research can be of great use to you? What if I told you, we have the means to reignite the smolders of One for All? He asked, his gaze fixed on him. Shaken to his core by the doctor's suggestion, Izuku gasped. Why, you mean, you have a way to revive One for All? He inquired, confirming his understanding. Takashi gave a nod. From what All Might told me, One for All is a quirk that was built off the combined growth passed down from previous wielders before you inherited it as the ninth. It was a source of great power that he used to make sure those who needed a hero's aid got it. Takashi continued. My results have shown that quirk awakenings can, in special instances, be tied to the strength of our core beliefs and our connections to those we cherish, sowing the seeds needed for it to evolve and grow. I believe the ties you have with your friends from UA, as well as your family and Mr. Toshinori, have the potential to reawaken One for All's core. To let you wield it again. While they continued talking and Toshinori tended to Kazuto, Ochaco was leaning against the door eavesdropping on them. Deku, she whispered. Hold on. This is a lot to take in at once. Izuku yelled. Like I said, I had to essentially destroy my quirk in order to bring down All for One. Whatever is left in me is long gone. Dr. Takashi was shaking his head. You say that. But I have found scientific proof, in all my years of studying quirks, that those whose quirks become unusable because of our factors or physical conditions still leave behind what is comparable to a lingering flame within its user, like a wick of a candle that can be used again. Izuku gasped. I strongly believe that we can reawaken One for All, even if it's reduced to smolders. But, the decision is ultimately yours. He then raised his hand again, leaving Izuku mute. I wish to offer you this proposal, Izuku Midoriya. Will you lend yourself to the future of my research? If you do, I promise, no, I swear to do all I am physically capable of, to reawaken One for All so you can regain your quirk. He said, if you need the consent of your friends and family, I'll make the same proposal to them. I want to make sure you are 100% comfortable before going any further. Your personal feelings will be my top priority going forward. The hero was at a loss for words. Young man, you too, can become a hero. Unwilling to agree, his hand started to shake. However, after recalling the development he gained at UA and gained the courage to shake his hand while using his quirk to keep others safe. All right. I'll agree. Yes, he exclaimed. Dr. Takashi wiped a quick tear from his eye and grinned. Thank you, Deku. I promise to not let you down. I swear, he responded. Then, behind him, there was a knock on the door. Izuku turned to see Toshinori and Ochaco, who was casually whistling to cover up her listening. Izuku grinned and nodded, giving his master a fist bump. I had a feeling you would accept, Midoriya. In that case, don't forget these words. You earned the right to wield One for All with your own hands. And you have the support from not just me, but also from the vestiges of the previous wielders, my master included. Then, grinning broadly, Ochako added her own fist. She added, after all, we've been a team since the beginning. Izuku then saw Eri slip her hand in as well, her nod indicating that she wanted to assist. You also have ME backing you, Deku, as well as the rest of our class. We chipped in to get you that prized battlesuit, and we'll do it again if it means bringing back One for All. Thanks, you guys, Izuku exclaimed, grinning only with tears in his eyes. Remember, go beyond, exclaimed Toshinori. Plus Ultra, shouted Izuku and Ochako together. Kazuto silently observed from his bed. The sheer number of people helping the hero who had just saved his life astounded him. Mr. Deku, he whispered. Izuku promised Dr. Takashi that he would find a way to rekindle the flame of One for All within him as they collaborated on his quirk evolution research over the course of the following 4 days. He conducted a diagnostic scan and a brain scan on the first day, and he gave Izuku instructions to reflect on his past conflicts and One for All memories. Dr. Takashi fulfilled his end of the bargain the following day by meeting with and obtaining DNA samples from each of his UA classmates. High and those near him, he had to take blood from people who didn't have hair, but he was able to get hair from most of his friends, including Toshinori, Kota, Eri, and Inko. People like Hagakure, Mineta, and Koji were considered special cases. He was able to get samples from other pro heroes, such as Aizawa, Mandalay, Recovery Girl, and Gran Torino, as an additional safety measure. After making his morning rounds of the city on the 3rd day, Izuku met with Takashi in his on-site laboratory at Jaku Hospital. He sat at his desk and said, morning, Izuku. Sleep okay? Izuku gave a nod. Izuku answered, yeah. How did things go with my friends? Takashi wheeled his chair aside to show him, grinning. The quirk's DNA structures and factors, extracted from each of his friends and loved ones, were stored on his desk computer. He recalled his brief outburst when the doctor attempted to cut his hair. They were very easy to converse with. You do have such wonderful classmates, Izuku. When I told them it was in an attempt to reawaken One for All, they didn't hesitate to agree. However, let's just say it was a bit difficult when I went to visit your childhood friend, Dynamite. Izuku's face lit up with embarrassment at the mention of Bakugo's hero name, and he laughed in an embarrassed tone as he imagined his angry face. He said, let me guess. You made him wig out, before he said he would do it himself. Takashi gave a nod. In the case of Toshinori and your mother, I collected an extra sample of their blood due to your close ties with them both. Your mother is for obvious reasons and, as for All Might, he was also a wielder of One for All as well as the man who passed it on to you. His readings are especially interesting, given the history of your quirk factors at work during your prime. The doctor went on. With all this, I will be attempting to see if I can overlap it with your data and see how a sample of your DNA would react to your friend's quirk factors. Izuku smiled lightly and thanked Takashi while telling him he did not need to rush get some sleep. The doctor's face turned red as his stomach gave a loud growl. Hey. Looks like I forgot to eat. Hey. Such is what happens when you're engrossed in your work, he responded. Izuku said, want me to grab you something from the cafeteria? Takashi graciously declined, explaining that he simply needed to locate the lunch bag he had hidden nearby. Izuku looked over his shoulder as there was a knock on the door. Pardon the intrusion. But, we were told this is where we'd be able to find the pro hero, Deku. Someone said. Izuku gasped a little because he recognized the tone of the voice right away. The door then opened, revealing Shuichi and Atsuhiro, known by their villain identities as Spinner and Mr. Compress while they were working with the League of Villains, as Takashi yelled back that they were in the right place. Shuichi interrupted, saying, sorry to interrupt, but, can we talk in private, kid? Despite not understanding what was going on, Izuku agreed with a stern expression on his face. In the same moment back at Izuku's house, Kazuto was taken in by Inko after the two of them stood up for him, with Ares' help accelerating his recuperation. However, it was no longer at the apartment building where he had spent his childhood. Izuku invited Inko to move in with him after he was able to purchase his own home thanks in part to the money he made from his pro-hero work. It made more room for their possessions. Izuku's All Might merchandise adorned his room, which doubled as his off-site office for hero work. In addition to a framed copy of his old journal signed by All Might, he had a commissioned drawing hanging on his wall. Based solely on his recollection, it was the faces of Yoichi, All Might, and himself, the former One for All wielders. Inko was creating her own garden in their spacious backyard. Hugging Kazuto, Inko exclaimed, you poor baby, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Any mother that willingly abandoned their child for petty reasons like that is no mother in my book. Kazuto was astounded by Inko's generosity and saw a reflection of Deku in her. Ochaco laughed. Ochaco saw his expression and said, "She's just like him, right?" Kazuto muttered in astonishment, "Yeah. Wow." After leaving the hospital, Kazuto was given used clothing from Izuku's early years because his own clothes were in a ragged and bloody state due to the incident. As he sat in her lap, Inko grinned and rubbed the top of his head. He was happy when he felt a mother's love, but he was also ashamed of being pampered and would not say anything in response. Inko gave Ochaco a quick glance. She said, "Ochaco, can I ask you something?" "What is it, Inko? Do you need me to do something for you?" Ochaco responded. Inko gave a headshake. "No, not really. But, I wanted to know how you feel about my boy, Izuku." She replied. Ochaco looked away sheepishly as his cheeks flushed at the mention of his name. "Why you too?" she inquired, and Inko looked perplexed. "Sheesh. It feels like everyone, including my mother and friends, has been bugging me about whether or not I have feelings for Deku. I didn't expect his mom to be added to that list." Inko raised her hand and apologized if her question had bothered her. Ochaco, however, shook her head. "It's all right. Maybe, since you're his mother, you can help me too," she responded. "If I'm being honest, I don't know how to deal with this myself. Whenever we are together, I hesitate to tell him. I mean, with our work as pro heroes and all the time we get to spend nowadays, what if that throws a monkey wrench into it?" "Oh, Ochaco, sweetie," was her response. "Then again, it's probably my own fault for not letting him know sooner. He has been trying just as hard as the rest of us, even more so because he was carrying one for all. I supported him whenever he needed me, and he's definitely returned the favor and then some." She went on. "I was so focused on becoming stronger and on my goals so that I wouldn't want to be a burden to him. Or to have these feelings interfering." She looked down at her hand. Ochaco went on, "I've been at my wit's end on multiple occasions, and almost all the time it's about our relationship. Is it wrong that I want to tell him I love him? How would that make him feel?" she asked, recalling her speech from the rooftop and the tired renegade Izuku being harassed. Her tears were as clear as day. To Ochaco's surprise, Inko smiled. "I don't think it's wrong at all, honey. Just from the sound of your voice, I can tell you want to respect him. But, do you want to know something?" she inquired. Kazuto looked at Inko while she nodded. It was right around his first week or so at UA and all he could talk about was the number of pro heroes he met, being able to study under All Might, as well as how amazed he was by his friends. She continued, "As time went on, he only sung your praises more and more. He'd actually bring you up the most, Ochaco." Ochaco exhaled. "I was so happy that my Izuku had made so many wonderful friends at UA. I felt so relieved that he was coming out of his shell more." She continued, removing a tear. "When you kids were moved to the dorms, he kept sending me letters about you all were doing. It helped me stay at ease despite him being so far away. But he never stopped highlighting your accomplishments. You've become quite the figure in his life." She continued to rub Kazuto's head. "And recently, when he comes home, he's constantly asking me for advice on dating, how to impress a girl. Or how I met his father. By now, it's easy to say, he's having the same trouble you are. If that helps you in any way, just know he's in the same boat as you. At the end of the day, just remember that you're only human despite your job as heroes." She continued with a grin. Imagining herself and Izuku sitting in a boat together made Ochaco blush even more. With their backs to one another, they were merely twitching their fingers and occasionally catching a glimpse of one another. Ochaco muttered, "Izuku." In the meantime, Izuku went back outside Jaku Hospital and sat down with Shuichi and Atsuhiro on a bench. He was sitting between the two former villains, each holding a canned drink. There was a lot of tension in the air, and nobody was sure who should speak first. Atsuhiro said, "Should I begin, Spinner?" Shuichi took a quick look, shook his head and then sighed. "A couple days ago, we got to speaking with All Might. We had some questions and he told us about the truth about All for One's plans. He also highlighted on what All for One really wanted out of Shigaraki," said the lizard. Izuku remembered Shigaraki's face and gasped a little. Shuichi clenched his can tighter as he thought of All for One's cunning smirk. Neither of us had any idea the man was going to literally wear him like a flesh suit, and I sat in a prison cell throughout the rest of my comrades' battles. Toga, Dabi, Kurogiri, he told us everything about them as well." Atsuhiro went on, "In a way, I was glad to hear they continued fighting for their own reasons. But we're all that's left of our old little club." Izuku snarled, I should have done something to stop him. I should have talked Shigaraki, and no, Tenko, out of it, and as if to add insult to injury, Stain chose to fight back with all might, before that bastard stole his quirk and killed him. What was I thinking? The mere fact that All for One and Garaki were trying to mutate my only friend just so he could move in, even going so far as to manipulate every part of his life, makes me furious, he snarled. Noticing, Shuichi thanked him and started to take deep, relaxing breaths. Atsuhiro stepped in, and Shuichi nodded. What Shuichi is trying to say, Midoriya, is that he's sorry for the spiteful things he said to you years ago. The incident in question occurred when Izuku was sitting in an interrogation room with Spinner following the end of the war. Oh, it's no problem. You don't have to apologize, and, if I'm honest, I wasn't sure if I should have told you about what happened. If you knew, especially after what you went through, I thought you would have burst into an uncontrollable fit and lose control of yourself. Izuku continued, All for One used all of you, all for his own evil agenda. Atsuhiro glanced out at the individuals and vehicles that passing. Since we were released from prison thanks to good behavior, we've been wondering what's next for us. Would it be worth it to revive the League without our former comrades? After everything that happened? Of the original League of Villains? We're all that's left. He went on. We weren't sure. But, Shuichi later told me he wanted to speak with you. I only tagged along for moral support. Izuku sighed and glanced between them. Izuku put his hand on top of Shuichi's scaly one and said, I guess, at the end of it all, we've been having a bit of identity crisis. Shuichi continued. Your octopus friend has already done a lot for other heteromorphs while I rotted in prison, and I knew for sure I wasn't about to start another riot anytime soon. Izuku turned to face Atsuhiro and said, if it will help, maybe. You could see this as your chances to plot out a new future? To redeem yourselves. Your friends might be gone. But you could use your quirks and experiences for positive motives. While keeping their spirits alive. Shuichi scratched his head. Mr. Compress, you could become a hero if you were to improve on your quirk and used it to help. Even if you didn't want to, you could find good work in other areas thanks to it. Your power to shrink and encapsulate anything would be a great asset to those working in industry or other heavy lifting jobs. He continued. Then he looked at Shuichi. And Spinner. Your book about the League was a surprise hit with audiences who were interested in you. It shined new light on each of you, allowing others to understand your lives and motives. You could maybe try and use your writing talent to publish more stories or self-help books. He went on. Or you could work with Tentacle and work to improve the lives of the other heteromorphs. It's not too late for either of you to turn your lives around. Both of them looked at each other as Izuku fell still. Atsuhiro chuckled and stroked his chin, saying, after all, look at what became of Gentle Criminal. His life greatly improved after he left the villain gig behind. Shuichi looked down towards his hands. I have to admit, Captain Compress does have a nice ring to it. I'll think about it. He replied, thanks for hearing us out, and thanks for sticking up for Shigara. I mean, Tenko, when it really mattered. Izuku gave a slight grin. If either of you ever need help, feel free to contact me. If I'm out, I'm sure Centipeder and Bubble Girl will let me know right away. He concluded. Atsuhiro grinned. Well, look who's been stepping up in the world. Never would have expected you, kiddo. He laughed. Izuku simply shrugged and said that a lot has changed since the end of the war. Shuichi sighed silently as he glanced down at his hands. In other places as the days passed for Izuku and his companions, Garaki persisted in completing his latest creation. Its body was now covered in tubes and sensors. The creature's growth, vital signs, and steady heartbeat were all monitored by the malevolent physician. A broad smile spread across his face as he examined the figures. He turned back to the creature in his chair and exclaimed, excellent. You're maturing just as I knew you would. Things are going along as planned. In about 48 hours, you'll be complete and set loose upon Japan. And when the dust settles from your destructive rampage, Izuku and his foolish friends will be gone, along with the remainder of those annoying heroes. He got up from his chair and pressed his hand against the glass. He remarked, of all the Nomu I've ever created, including what I once called my masterpieces, I'd say you are my true greatest work, so I think it's about time you had a name befitting of your perfection. I know. From this moment on, your name is Aku. With the number of quirks I've infused into you, only you will decide who deserves life or death. The creature's recently mutated mouth allowed it to laugh from within. Its lips revealed razor-sharp teeth. After another day, Izuku came home to find Kazuto still wearing his old clothes. When Ochaco saw that the only extra clothing she had were his old All Might clothes, he was a little taken aback. Izuku watched in agitation as the girls merely laughed. After saying goodbye to Izuku, Ochaco joined the Midoriya family for dinner. Izuku went back to Dr. Takashi's office at the start of the following day to inquire about the status of his research. But when he got there, he found the doctor on the floor, totally unconscious from exhaustion. His work kept him focused through the night, so he hadn't slept much. "Hey, Dr. Takeshi. Are you okay?" Izuku shook him awake and said. Before waking up, the doctor gave a small snort. He laughed in embarrassment and said, Who? What? Oh, Deizuku. Sorry. I must have been working way too much these last couple of days." He awoke and, as he cleaned up, asked Izuku if he would forgive him. When he was finished, he showed Izuku a vial of light silver fluid next to his computer and then picked it up. He exclaimed excitedly, "Izuku. This is it. This is what I have been working to produce these last sleepless nights. It's meant to reinvigorate your quirk factors and, hopefully, relight the flames of One for All's ashes. It may take time to fully take effect, but I have an 80% guarantee that this will work." Izuku silently watched, visualizing All Might in his prime against the glass reflection. As Takashi placed a hand on his shoulder, he asked, "Are you sure? I know you did all this for me. You've definitely earned my trust with how diligent you worked. But some part of me is hesitant. If it does reanimate One for All, is my body going to be able to withstand its incredible power again?" He sighed and turned away. Izuku raised an eyebrow and said, "I understand. You have doubts." The two of them were staring at each other. "And that's perfectly fine. You don't have to take it if you don't want to. Could give me more time to make sure it's perfected. But, can I tell you something? It may be somewhat selfish. You see, I had another reason for wanting to work with you to bring One for All back. It isn't for any personal or profitable reasons, but when I heard about the history behind the quirk, I thought that Japan should find a way to restore and preserve it for the betterment of the future. It may not happen anytime soon, even decades from now, but it would be worth having a hero with this quirk if someone on the same level as All for One was to appear." He clarified. "Do you understand?" Izuku grinned. He said quietly, "Yeah, I do." He looked at the vial behind him. Would you maybe give me some time to think about it? I'll call you if I change my mind." Izuku responded. Takashi grinned confidently and nodded. "Sure. After all we've been through, I think I've gotten to know you a lot more, Deku. Take all the time you need." Replied before a different thought occurred. "Oh, that's right. I recently received an email from your friend, Krieta, about wanting to meet up with you and the others for a class reunion. Get together. She extended an invitation to me as well. Did you get the notice?" Izuku grinned. "Yeah. It's later this afternoon. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Class 1A barely gets together much anymore since we graduated. I can't wait to see everyone again." Izuku replied, and the two of them laughed. Then he informed Takashi that before departing, he needed to make some last-minute arrangements. Izuku leapt across the city in his battlesuit, his cape flowing behind him as he did so. "I wonder, am I fit to wield One for All again? There's no longer a need since All for One has been gone for so long. But, maybe Dr. Takashi has a point. What if we do have someone appear in the future that's on par with him?" He pondered. Izuku eventually touched down in Musudafu's downtown. He remembered his suit when he entered a jewelry store and noticed people like Ryuko examining the display cases. "Huh? What are you doing here, Ryuko?" He responded. She took a quick look behind her before turning and waving to him while chuckling lightly. "I could ask you the same question, Deku. You here getting something for yourself?" She inquired. "Maybe you could help me pick something out for Mirko. Unless Eri told you, she was going through treatment with Rewind and has successfully regained her hands and legs again." Izuku sighed. "Really? That's great. Eri's quirk is really amazing," he chuckled. Ryuko gave a nod. "I told her she should consider a career as a support hero or doctor if she wanted to help more people. There are definitely some war-wounded heroes that would benefit from Rewind's power." She went on. Izuku continued to smile as he glanced down at the case before him and gave a little gasp when he noticed a tiny ring with a pink diamond on top. The owner of the store came over at that moment. "Welcome. What can I do for you too?" he asked, gasping upon realizing that he had clients. Oh, forgive me. I almost didn't recognize you, Ryuko, or you, Mr. Deku." Izuku laughed and explained that he didn't typically visit jewelry stores. Then he turned to face the ring again and gestured toward it. How much is that ring? I'm considering buying it," he inquired. Before presenting the ring to him, the proprietor retrieved it from the exhibit. Izuku gasped, "You have good taste, Deku. This is our store's special. Sakura diamond ring. Due to the rarity of the gemstone, it usually fetches quite a hefty price, about 300,000 yen. F for something so little," he shouted, and Ryuku laughed. The owner laughed too, then took out a ring box, put it inside, and, to his surprise, moved it closer to him. "But I'm willing to give it away as a thank you gift to the hero who risked everything for our sake before he even graduated from UA. I have a suspicion that you selected this specific ring for someone special. So think of it as a thank you from my store for reminding everyone what a real hero is." And even after our evacuation from UA, he recalled how he was within earshot of the crowd yelling for his rejection when he said, "Treated you before." Huh? However, I don't need you to do that, really, sir, I'd be happy to pay you. With mixed emotions, he yelled. Ryuku abruptly pulled out her credit card and showed it to the proprietor. She caught him off guard by saying, "Then, allow me to pay for it, Midoriya. Don't worry. You are not required to pay me back." Even though she knew he loved her, Izuku fell silent and then pictured Uraraka wearing the ring. "I already know who it's likely for, and I ask you make her happy." With tiny tears welling up in his eyes, he muttered, Thank you, Ryuku, really." Later on, Izuku arrived last because he saw almost everyone in the yard and chose to wear casual clothes instead of his mech suit. It was late afternoon when the Class 1A students started to gather at a small but elegant retreat owned by Yaoyorozu's family. They all arrived in their hero costumes after Momo told them they didn't need to wear anything too fancy. "Hey, he's there, Midoriya." Izuku waved back as Kirishima yelled and waved his arm, and Ojiro and Sato hurried over to join him. "Kirishima, Ojiro, Sato, you two, it's wonderful to see all of you again," he shouted, and Sato chuckled. "Yes. I'm not joking. I apologize, Midoriya, but work has taken up so much of my time that I haven't spoken to you in a long time. However, it appears that nothing has slowed you down." Izuku heard another voice calling out to him at that moment, and he turned to see Mina standing next to Yaoyorozu and Hagakure. The invisible girl waved her hands to get attention. "Midoriya. This way." When Ishido called, Momo approached him, and Iida soon followed. "Izuku. You're there," he chuckled. "Hey, Iida. How are you doing?" Izuku shook his hand and asked. Momo laughed. "I'm happy you were able to come." She offered him a drink and said, "Welcome to the party, Midoriya." Ishido slyly slithered over to his side and gave it a gentle prod. "Hi, Midoriya. Are you curious about something juicy?" "Heh, she said softly, her voice low. Before she could say anything more, Uraraka suddenly materialized from behind and slapped her hands over Mina's chattering lips. "There's a little lady who don't you dare," she shouted, simultaneously feeling embarrassed and angry. Mina turned around, her voice muffled by Ochaco, and Izuku laughed. Shinsho shook his head and watched from nearby, and Momo sighed. "Ishido, really?" She chastised Ishido, saying, "You don't go gossiping about your friends like that. Especially when they're in earshot of you." Izuku felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to see Shoto with Mineta and Shiro. "Oh, Todoroki. Hello." Izuku gasped, and Shoto smiled and nodded quietly. Mineta gasped as soon as he saw Izuku's face. Dude. What happened to that large scar on your face?" He pointed to his cheek and asked. Izuku scratched his cheek and laughed lightly. "Oh. Ochako's recommendation was made possible by this unique masseuse. She not only gave me the best massage I've ever had, but she also had a quirk that accelerated wounds' natural healing." He clarified, "Even the one on my arm and hands are gone." Shoto tilted his head slightly, appearing perplexed. "Believe me, I thought I was dreaming when I saw it was gone." "You never had one for all, it seems. Are you all right, though?" Todoroki said. "I remember you saying they were experiences you never wanted to forget about." "Well, considering what we've been through, at first I thought they were a part of my identity. However, I felt more relaxed ever since." Mineta snickered to himself as Izuku gasped, "My mom was definitely happy." Shiro grinned, speculating that it was so he could get a girlfriend without having to worry about them coming across as a turn-off. "Oh, no comment," he answered, and the two laughed even harder. Momo was chatting with Jiro and Kaminari across the courtyard. "Jiro, how was your trip?" Jiro nodded when she said, "I hope you both had a great time touring Europe." "Yes. We've actually been trying to come up with a suitable way to express our gratitude for that," she said. "You didn't need to go that far for us, Yaoyorozu. However, we are grateful for it," Kaminari continued. In relation to that, how have your visits to Endeavor gone? I believe I know who someone is interested in. You come just to see Todoroki, don't you? Jiro sighed and nudged him. Dude, she shot back, causing Momo to flush and twitch her fingers. They both gasped at the same time. Well, if I would be honest, you aren't too far off, Kaminari, she said. Not at all. Everyone stopped when they heard someone clapping their hands, Jiro said. All eyes turned to see Aizawa appear alongside Present Mic, Cementos, and All Might, among others. All right. Calm down, everyone, Aizawa said in a monotone. I hope you weren't planning to gossip between yourselves all night. Mike laughed and threw his arm over his shoulder, while Cementos laughed from behind. Oh no, Eraserhead, lighten up. Since they are no longer students, I don't believe you should be controlling them in that way. Toshinori nodded as he explained. Besides, Class 1A has been so busy as heroes that this is a big night for them. He is correct. To be honest, I'm shocked you made it, Aizawa. Have you not felt happier since retiring? The latter moaned to himself as he asked. Anyway. He shrugged and said, I guess they do earn this. At that moment, Izuku saw Dr. Takashi arrive with Eri and Kazuto, the boy still dressed in his homemade clothes. So, this is the well-known UA Class 1A. High school. Takashi teased, the ones who took on so many notorious villains since they were only first years. Kazuto saw Izuku right away and waved back, feeling shy, but then he felt a push from behind, telling him that he could hang around Izuku if he wanted to. Eri accepted and took his hand, bringing him with her. Kazuto, how was your sleep? I apologize for not being there to welcome you upon your awakening. However, I am aware that my mother has been smitten with you, hasn't she? Kazuto blushed as he asked. Izuku muttered, well, I don't hate it or anything. Gradually, a few of his classmates started to accompany him. Oh, you must be the child who was involved in that serious car accident and to whom Izuku gave his blood. Ojiro remarked, that must have been really frightening for someone your age. The young man started to say something, but Kirishima gave him a back pat and gave him a gentle shake. Even so, kiddo, that was really manly. I've heard from the reporters that you risk your life to save another child. Little hero, you already have my admiration, he declared with pride. Hagakure started to ruffle his hair as she wanted to shake his hand, but her invisible body caught him off guard, causing him to fumble back with a shriek and crash into a Shido. You have Midoriya's voice. Did you know that our Midoriya had a similar beginning as you? Bakugo's voice could be heard from a distance, almost frightening Yuga. He went rushing to help his best friend, Bakugo, from being captured by a villain. And all before they entered high school, she added. Pinky, shut up. That's not what anyone wants to hear. Izuku chuckled nervously and patted Kazuto's head as he screamed, frightening him and making him run behind Izuku's legs. Don't worry about him. When you get to know Kachan, he turns out to be a nice guy despite his intimidating appearance. He said, we're actually childhood friends. Kazuto looked up, a puzzled expression on his face. As a child, who would want a big mouth like that as a friend? Izuku saw Bakugo approaching at that moment. So, have you noticed any sparks emerging from One for All yet? Izuku looked away with a worried expression as he asked. The doctor told us he had finished his experiment. His friends noticed right away. Midoriya, is everything all right? Kirishima inquired. The answer is no, I haven't taken it yet. Some of them sighed, while others respected his concerns and others appeared concerned. If I'm honest, I was worried I wouldn't be able to handle it again, he stammered. We all pitched in because we wanted to help, Midoriya. Ojiro remarked, it's similar to when we banded together to pay for that battlesuit. However, caution has always been a trait of your own. Todoroki put his hand on Izuku's shoulders and said, I understand that you might be a little uneasy. After your altercation with All for One, we all knew you put a lot of effort into keeping the flame burning. Additionally, I always sensed that you wished you could have continued it for a longer period of time. He said, after all, you used to be quirkless. Kazuto looked up at Izuku and gasped when he heard Shoto's words. He was exactly like me? At that moment, Ochako approached Izuku and grasped his hand. Deku, you ought to accept it, because we all cared about you, we came together. You know we'll be here to support you even if you don't immediately grasp One for All. Every step of the way too. She grinned and said, you don't have to worry about hiding it from anyone anymore. Izuku's friends started nodding or saying encouraging things to him as they gathered around him. Bakugo also came up to him, displaying his eagerness for their rivalry to continue with the expression in his eyes. Toshinori was grinning from a distance with the other teachers. Young man, It is up to you. When I first met you, your diligence and hard work earned you one for all, and now there are a lot of people who are willing to support you. Izuku tried not to cry as he glanced around at his friends gathered by his side, including Eri. He had memories of their school days rushing through his mind like a vicious torrent, warming his heart with each new one that came back. I think we both knew you wouldn't hesitate, just like back then too, he thought. I'm sure even the original wielder would still approve. Dr. Takashi, you wouldn't have brought it with you, would you? Takashi was a little surprised when he asked, but he nodded and grinned. Like I mentioned, Izuku, it's ultimately up to you. He took the vial out of his pocket and handed it to him, the others watching expectantly. As before, he glanced at his reflection against the tube and started to visualize All Might's arrogant grin before he started to visualize the other wielders as well. But if I may be honest, you have some pretty amazing friends, not hesitating to come together for their classmate, he said. He brought the vial to his lips and thought, well, here goes nothing. One for all, if you're still lingering within me, let me borrow your power once again. He started downing the silver fluid and then took a large swallow, shivering a little because he didn't like the taste. So, what should happen at this point? Yuga inquired, and Ochaco stepped forward to ask Izuku, who rubbed his stomach, if he was feeling any different or if nothing had changed. Since it will take time for it to spread, Takashi stated, I don't think anything's going to change suddenly. Izuku nodded and turned to face Toshinori, who was grinning. He was taken aback when a look of embarrassment appeared on his face. I guess, in the next few days, if nothing happens, we'll have our answer. Toshinori's eyes widened as he responded, but it tasted somewhat better than having to ingest a strand of All Might's hair. His classmates' reactions varied, with some staring at Toshinori and others laughing and acting disgusted. Not at all. Is that how you previously acquired the quirk? Ashido exclaimed. Ah, nasty. Bakugo clutched his stomach and started laughing uncontrollably. Yuga, Kaminari, and Mineta all appeared to be about to throw up. That is completely incorrect. Why, I take it you didn't taste hairspray or anything oily? Bakugo braced himself on Izuku's shoulder and laughed even harder as Jiro yelled. You're such a nerd, ha ha ha. You got your quirk that way, don't you? All I want is a clear view of your foolish face. He laughed and yelled. As more eyes turned toward him, Toshinori started to wave his hands frantically. Hey, hear me out. He had to swallow some of my DNA to pass one for all to Midoriya. I wouldn't have done it that way. That's the way it is, he declared, then noticed that present Mike and Aizawa were staring at him with disgust. All Might, is that how you also got it? Aizawa raised an eyebrow in question. Aizawa, do not ask me to answer that, he cried out. Ochaco just chuckled quietly to avoid being noticed while the others carried on laughing or moaning. However, she soon noticed Izuku staring at her, quickly averting her gaze and whistling to herself. Perhaps I shouldn't have mentioned that, however, he thought, that was nothing in comparison to the workout he gave me beforehand. Yaoyorozu started tapping against a glass to get everyone's attention as the party went into the evening and stars started to appear in the night sky above. May I have everyone's attention? Your class representative and vice president would like to make a proposal, Momo answered the phone. In order to remember the evening, Iida then asked everyone to participate in a group photo. A group photo? Ah, I always feel gypped whenever my picture is taken. No one will see me except for my gloves and boots, said Hagakure. Ojiro laughed softly. It's okay, Hagakure. Maybe you should ask Momo if you can borrow a shirt or something. He responded. Kirishima looked around in confusion as they began preparing. Bakugo said, Huh? What are you doing, Kirishima? Iida stopped to consider. Has anyone seen Midoriya or Uraraka? He said. We can't have the photo without them. Momo clarified. I think Uraraka said she had to use the bathroom, so I let her use the one inside. As for Midoriya, I think he had to take a call. Ashido's horns protruded as she took on the appearance of an ecstatic kitten. Asui's attention was drawn when she happened to notice. Ashido let out a deep sigh after she said, Don't even try it. Ribbit. Actually, Ochaco and Izuku had retired to a peaceful spot in the surrounding gardens. Standing at each other's sides, they silently gazed up at the starry sky. A light wind blew past them. They were thinking the same thing in their minds. See Izuku, hurry up. You are capable. J. Just express your true feelings for her to Ochaco. See Ochaco, hurry up. This is something you can do. J. Just express your true feelings for Deku. Izuku approached her hand slowly, but it stopped just as he was about to touch her. To Izuku's great surprise, however, Ochaco happened to notice and reached back to hold his. He exclaimed, "Oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to." Ochaco shook her head in silence. "It's okay, Deku. I actually wanted to ask you something." She clenched her fists more tightly and said, "Will you hear me out?" Izuku noticed that her cheeks were starting to flush as she turned to face him anxiously. She was also trembling a little. She wanted to say something, but he could tell she was afraid of upsetting their friendship. He took both of her hands and held them gently to help her relax. Ochaco gasped as he whispered, Actually, would it be okay if I went first?" As he struggled to control his anxieties to control his subsequent sentences, he also started to flush. His conversations with Toshinori and Inko infiltrated his thoughts, advising him to try not to overthink things and to simply let them out naturally. He inhaled deeply for a moment before pulling the ring from his jacket pocket. Ochaco gasped at what he saw. With tears starting to well up, she whispered, Deku, as he carefully put it on her finger. After that, she turned back to face Izuku, who was also visibly crying. Ochaco waited expectantly as he said, Ochaco, this has been something I wanted to say. But I couldn't say it properly before. It's been weighing on me, and now I think I'm ready. Why yeah? Me too, she stammered, keeping her eyes from welling up. Izuku held her hand and gasped a little, but he continued to smile. He said, Ochaco Uraraka. I love you. At that moment, he felt Ochaco's hand move over his own, being careful to keep one finger up to avoid triggering zero gravity. Ever since we first met at the entrance exam, you've always had my back in helping me through my hardest times. I wanted to tell you so badly, but I guess I never even noticed. I was so fixated on bettering myself so I could keep up with everyone. Tears were finally streaming down her face. No I mean. She sniffled, Izuku Midoriya, I love you too. Izuku's eyes softened as she embraced him. She leaned into his chest and sniffled as they held hands, saying, I've been suppressing my own emotions for so long. Ever since we were going to train at summer camp, I knew I had a crush on you. But I put those feelings aside, so I could focus on improving myself for the sake of my own goals. I didn't want to be a burden to anyone else either, especially you. Izuku leaned his head against hers. But, after all we've been through, I'm saying it now, because I don't want to lose you, she said. Izuku laughed quietly. Izuku muttered, looks like we both needed time to mature. Ochaco laughed, then followed suit. After looking each other in the eyes, Ochaco led the way as they leaned in for a tender but deep kiss. The longer they kissed, the more their tense emotions seemed to be washed away. Their lips drew apart, still holding hands, but they stayed focused on each other. If you'd like, maybe we could go on a real date sometime. I've had so many ideas for places we could go. But, I want to make sure we both have the time, he went on. She laughed and leaned against him, saying, if it's for you, Izuku, I'd gladly make time. I'd like more time. Now that we cleared that hurdle. Then, while Bakugo was leaning against the wall nearby, they started laughing. He was hidden by a big shrub. He crossed his arms and smiled briefly. Before he left, he thought, about time, you idiot. While Momo and Iida prepared everything for the group photo, the two were able to return in time to avoid raising suspicions among their peers. Then, to everyone's surprise, the class representative invited Mr. Dakuda, the photographer, over. He recalled the phone call he had received from Momo prior to the celebration. An exclusive chance to snap a photo of the students from Class 1A. Heh. How could I miss an opportunity like that? He took multiples and printed them for each student after making sure everyone was posing with his quirk, whole body lens. Because of the great success of his article about Izuku, he was also granted permission to print their picture in the newspaper. Ochaco removed and put away her ring for the picture. With Izuku in the middle, dressed in his battlesuit, they all struck the same victory pose as All Might. The fact that parts of Hatsume's actual self appeared in the picture because of the camera flashes was a huge surprise, and she was happy that she had asked Yaoyorozu for extra clothing. Whoa. No way. I never thought we'd see your actual face again, Hagakure. Jiro burst into tears. Tokiyami agreed with Sato's response, yeah, but it's definitely worth seeing again. Hatsume turned to face Mineta and noticed that he was staring at her face in his picture before she began frantically using her invisible hands to bonk his head. Others started laughing as she yelled at him to stop staring at her and called him a creep. Izuku showed Kazuto that he, Eri, and the current teachers were all captured in the picture by giving him a copy. Tomorrow, by the following day, the young boy had fully recovered, and Izuku had persuaded his friends to help him find Kazuto's brother. Kazuto described his physique to them before they parted ways. They explained that they were almost twins and were searching for a child of his height with soft reddish eyes and the same white hair. With Bakugo, Shoto, and Uraraka following, Kazuto hopped across rooftops on Izuku's back while the majority of his friends covered the lower streets. To disperse the search, Tokiyami also had Jiro fly to the opposite side of town on Dark Shadow's wings. Izuku kept moving as memories of Officer Tsukauchi contacting the heroes earlier that day returned to him. Although I recognize how crucial it is for you to bring Kazuto and his brother back together, I would like to ask that you consider another issue as well. As you are aware, during Japan's reconstruction, All for One's principal scientist, Dr. Garaki, escaped from police custody. Since then, he has been on the run, and despite our best efforts, we haven't been able to find the madman. We have tracked all of his activities during our manhunt, so it is unlikely that he has fled the country. Please get in touch with me right away if you come across any hints or see the crazy person. Izuku squinted his eyes. Dr. Garaki, the creator of the Nomu. He's capable of cloning quirks and mutating test subjects to fit his mad goals, like what he did with Tamura Shigaraki. He was thinking. Don't tell me Kazuto's brother is in your hands, you madman. He was thinking. An earpiece placed a ring in his ear. Izuku. This is Deku. Chargebolt, is that you? Have you seen anyone? Kaminari. Groans, Deku, nothing yet. I wanted to follow up to remind you about the child's profile. With a moan, Bakugo joined the call through his earpiece. The sound of his voice shouting back at him made Kaminari wince. Bakugo. What a fool you are. He looks exactly like him, the child says. How difficult is it to locate a child with white hair? Kaminari. Of course. Dynamite, whatever you say. But you don't realize how many people call this city home. Momo. I'm Krieta. Although I believed I had found the target, it turned out to be a different child. Ojiro. Indeed. I'm not succeeding either. I made an effort to find out if anyone was aware of Kazuto and his brother beforehand. Izuku. Tailman, thanks for that. We will also continue our search. In the meantime, Garaki watched the sleeping Aku in his chamber as the heroes carried on their search above ground in his secret lair. Since the monster's physical and mental characteristics were stable, his computer approved his release. With a menacing smile on his face, he pushed a button on a remote control, causing the pod to hiss before opening and releasing the liquid inside. Aku fell to the ground as a result of the tubes that were attached to him releasing him. The physician chuckled strangely. He raised his hand and yelled, "It is time, arise, Aku. Rise so we can begin our destruction of the heroes and their feeble society." Aku's blood-red eyes, which had thin pupil slits, flashed open. With a hideous growl, he started to stand up by himself. He whirled around his long white hair and rattled his body, flickering small black flames off him like Dobby's fire. His body was well built, a cross between Shigaraki's and All for One's, and he had black skin and facial features that were similar to Shigaraki's. He turned to face Garaki, his mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. When they saw each other, they grinned. The doctor whispered, "At last. Midoriya will know true terror. His days are finished." Aku started to move, then abruptly stopped, shocking the doctor by falling to his knees. There were sounds of violent coughing and retching. He cried out, What? Aku, what is wrong with you?" The monster kept coughing until, in an explosive outburst, he expelled a tiny human figure along with bodily fluids. A young boy with disheveled clothes and slobbered white hair was the body that hit the ground. The doctor was shocked as Aku kept spitting out the remaining ones. Not enough with an angry expression on his face, Garaki yelled, "What are you saying? Aku? You just rejected the host body I built you upon. What do you mean, not enough?" Aku started to slowly get to his feet, complaining quietly. "Don't you know? You cannot function to your fullest capabilities without a host to feed off. That's what makes you so special to the other Nomu I've made. What's wrong?" he went on. Aku's slits glanced first at him, then at the child. Too weak, worthless, and inadequately hateful. Garaki's hand crushed the remote to his tank while he gawked and growled. "So what? It was the best I could do with the resources I had. You had all the time necessary to become one with this quirkless child. Do what I say and merge back. It's the only way you can fulfill your purpose," the doctor yelled. Aku swatted the boy's unconscious body away, displaying signs of rejection. Veins bulged on Garaki's bald head, and he growled. Aku's snarling intensified before he turned to face Garaki, his bloodlust-filled gaze freezing the doctor in terror. "Listen to me, you moron. I am your master. Your creator. he cried. I poured all my reserves into creating you so you would slaughter Midoriya, his friends, and the other pro-heroes. You cannot do that if you're fighting incomplete. Now do as I say. He shuddered, his mouth hanging open, as if he were looking back at an angry All for One. You will suffice in that case, Doctor. Do you want vengeance? Then let's work on it together. Garaki screamed in real terror as the monster swiftly swung at him, knocking his glasses off his head and sending him flying to the ground. After pinning him to the ground, Aku let out a fierce roar, close by. Takoba Municipal Beach's sandy shores were the destination of Izuku and Ochako's quest for Kazuto's brother. As he gazed at its white sands and stunning ocean view, Izuku was filled with memories of his training with All Might. He was shocked to see a huge, dark green statue of himself standing close to the sidewalk that overlooked the shore. When Ochako saw it, he laughed. I still can't believe they made a statue of you, Deku. They even got your color right. She chuckled. Izuku grinned. He remarked, well, when the news learned it was my training with All Might that the beach was cleaned, they wanted to erect a statue of me as a way of thanks. If All Might didn't train me, this beach would most likely still be a garbage dump. Kazuto watched the exchange before experiencing a sudden shock that caused his eyes to briefly widen. Help. Me. He said, hey. Did you feel that? Uraraka and Izuku turned to face him. Feel what? She inquired. Izuku said, do you see anything, Kazuto? Kazuto gave a headshake. No, but I had the weirdest feeling just run down my spine, he replied. Before the same sensation returned with the same voice, he started looking over the sands. He glanced back at the heroes. I think my brother might be nearby. That has to be the only explanation, he yelled. Ochako let out a gasp. Izuku lowered himself to his level and questioned, are you sure? The boy gave a nod. As they looked back at the beach, Izuku caught a glimpse of an odd lid among the grains out of the corner of his eye. Izuku picked it up and they hurried over. As he examined it and saw that the hinges had been ripped off, he muttered, this looks like a hatch door. But, where'd it come from? The three noticed an odd hole when they looked back. Kazuto urged the two heroes to assist him in searching because he thought it might lead to his brother. Beneath the sands the three went down in a mechanical elevator with Kazuto nearby, which came to the surface when Izuku got close. It led them far beneath Takoba Municipal Beach's sand and directly into Dr. Garaki's now abandoned hideout, where he and Aku had just been imprisoned. The two heroes were taken aback when they saw his equipment, tools, and other notes. Ochako's voice echoed, "W.O. Look at this place. How did something this big stay out of the radar of the police, let alone the other pro-heroes?" Looking down, Izuku saw a heap of ripped paper by his feet, which he realized was the remains of the newspapers he had destroyed out of hatred. Beneath his boot, he noticed a shred that showed his happy face. No doubt about it, Uravity. This has to be one of Dr. Garaki's secret lairs. But it doesn't look like one of the facilities he used to breed Nomu, he murmured. Kazuto faced him. He questioned, "And Nomu? What's a Nomu?" They aren't a thing anymore, but Nomu were essentially the remains of deceased people that the man who owns this lab performed experiments on. He reanimated them into monstrous creatures that wielded multiple quirks at the same time and mutated their bodies in the process. He sent them to attack innocent people and to cripple the heroes to further his plans. Izuku clarified. Ochako nodded and stated that his former employer, the now deceased All for One, had ordered it. Kazuto let out a gasp. They were zombies? He burst in terror. But, like Deku said, they're no longer being made as the doctor doesn't have the means or funding backing him like he previously had. Ochako continued. At that moment, Kazuto heard a voice in the vicinity moaning in pain. They all turned to see the unconscious boy that Aku had spat out earlier. The boy yelled, "Be brother," and ran to him. Kazuto knelt to get Izuku to stand up, and Izuku gasped before trailing closely behind. He shook and yelled, "Tetsuo, Tetsuo. Wake up, it's me, Kazuto." But he didn't answer. Izuku examined Tetsuo's body and saw the liquid dripping from him. Ochako came closer, then covered her nose in disgust at the foul stench of the fluid. "Oh, that reeks. Don't tell me Dr. Garaki was trying to experiment on kids now," she said. Kazuto heard a heartbeat and put his head to his chest. He gave a deep sigh. With tears in his eyes, he muttered, "Ichi's only asleep. Thank goodness." Izuku gave the boy a head pat while grinning. He reassured him, saying, "I promised you we'd find him. Now that we have, you boys are going to be all right." "Izuku, however, noticed a trail of black drippings close by that led back to the elevator shaft they had just used. He also saw that the doctor's broken glasses were under the table and that the main computer was still running. Then Ochaco caught a glimpse of the open capsule where Aku had been. Izuku rushed over and started trying to open the files left on the computer, eyes fixed on the screen, and he found a recorded video file within a subfolder titled Project Superior Nomu. Bringing it up revealed a recording of Dr. Garaki in the darkened laboratory, looking directly at the camera with a serious expression in his eyes. Deku? I got a bad feeling about this, she said. I think the doctor must have been working on something new recently. The heroes have once again triumphed, much to my utter disgust, but there is one, in particular, his killer, Deku, to whom I will devote the rest of my life, if necessary, to ensuring that he dies a tortuous and terrible death. I recently learned that my master, All for One, had fallen, and our ambitious plan to have him merge with Shigaraki, becoming the Demon Lord of Japan, had also failed. Izuku let out a gasp. I have started work on what I hope will be my crowning jewel among Nomu, but this one, oh. He will not be like the rest. I plan to create an unstoppable demon, not limited by its body, with the sole purpose of killing Izuku Midoriya and the rest of the heroes. May this log of video evidence be proof that evil never rests. If that boy believes he can get away with ending the life of the man I hold immense respect for, in the name of justice, he is sadly mistaken. The video ended there, and Izuku started a new one with Ochaco and Kazuto approaching from behind, carrying the unconscious Tetsuo in Ochaco's arms, and Garaki watching as Aku began to form in his pod before turning to face the camera. About a year has passed since I started this project, and things seem to be stable for the time being. Fortunately for me, the remnants of what I gave to that idiot, Shigaraki, will be crucial to the specimen's development. The specimen has been silent for some time now, only becoming active when it senses hatred from other organisms, which is what will fuel its destructive rampage. Izuku skipped over more self-promotion and sent the video a little later. I had the good fortune to receive a sample of All for One's primordial DNA a long time ago, from which I extracted and nurtured a seed of pure hate. I am not sure where this seed came from, but I will assume that it was a result of the Master's intense hatred for All Might, the man who had severely crippled him. After I found out about his death, I started directing similar seeds of hate that I had created from DNA samples of the League of Villain members into its construction, along with what can only be described as the physical embodiment of evil. Heh heh heh. As if the quirks of Shigaraki and his cohorts weren't enough, I do this to ensure that Izuku Midoriya has no chance of winning. Ochaco and Izuku both gasped. The animosity taken out of the League of Villains? Izuku clenched his fists and growled softly as she recalled her fight with Himiko Toga and their past interactions with League members, culminating in the misinterpreted Toga giving her life so she could live and donating her blood. What were you thinking, Garaki? Did you intend to remember Shigaraki and the others that All for One exploited for personal gain? At that moment, he brought up the most recent video recording, which, despite its briefness, showed Izuku shielding Kazuto's eyes due to the level of violence. All that was captured were Dr. Garaki's screams as Aku, now free and having rejected Tetsuo, devoured the doctor completely and fused his body into his own. Aku gave a deep growl before undergoing a freakish mutation, growing larger after absorbing Garaki. He then turned to the camera and roared loudly, damaging the devices enough to cut out. The sight left both heroes completely appalled. It killed him? Ochaco covered her mouth and whispered softly. That had to be the previous escape from the hatch. He must be at large in the city at the moment. Izuku backed away slowly, thinking. I tried to send a warning over his earpiece quickly, but all he heard was static. Hey guys, are you present? Drat! He yelled. Something must be interfering with Dr. Garaki's communications. Uravity! Get the children and take them somewhere secure. Later, I'll see you in the city. Ochaco moaned as he made a break for the shaft leading above and used boosters in his boots to wall jump his way up before he could say anything. She whispered, don't do anything reckless, Izuku. The All Might statue in Kamino Ward. Izuku's earpiece started to ring as he leapt across buildings and ran towards the city, using the rising smoke in the distance as a beacon to locate Aku. Bakugo. It's about time you responded, you idiot. Izuku. Dynamite. We discovered Dr. Garaki's hidden laboratory beneath Takoba Beach, and something escaped from there and is probably raging throughout the city. Bakugo. You're reporting in late, either way. What? That damn doctor is behind this. TCH. Izuku. I apologize, I'm on my way over. He had a jamming device installed, so I was unable to call from inside. However, his earpiece rang once more as soon as he ended the call with Bakugo. Ojiro. I'm here with Red Riot, Grape, and Cellophane attempting to contain this big black monstrosity that is attacking civilians near UA High. Izuku. I'm seeing smoke rising from Kamino Ward, and I just heard that Dynamite was fighting him. What? Ojiro. Are you serious? Does this thing have a duplication quirk of some sort? Izuku. Be careful, it might be one of Dr. Garaki's mutants. Izuku called Officer Tsukauchi after receiving a growing number of calls from his friends, all of whom claimed to be Aku-ing various residents of the city and to have heard that other pro-heroes were rushing to his aid. Izuku. It's Deku, Officer Tsukauchi. Do you copy? Tsukauchi. Hello, Midoriya. Are you phoning because of the raging black monster? Izuku. Yes. While on patrol with Uravity a short time ago, we discovered a covert lab where Dr. Garaki was manufacturing this thing. However, we also discovered video evidence that it activated, killed his creator, and then broke out. Tsukauchi. Garaki is dead. What? Izuku. His last creation, Aku, was created with the hatred that All for One and the League of Villains had instilled in him. He also equipped it with whatever cloned quirks he had created, all with the intention of killing me. Tsukauchi. Probably because you were the cause of All for One's demise. Okay, I'll send as many people as I can your way and make sure they know. Where are you? Izuku. Kamino Ward is almost here. Dynamite is also present. He hung up abruptly as he stopped on a rooftop overlooking Ground Zero, the location of All Might's statue after his battle with All for One. Before long, he saw Bakugo aiming his gauntlet at Aku, leaping down to his friend's side, and giving him a quick glance as the monster eyed him. Aku had grown to be roughly the same size as All for One's adult self, with the muscles to match. His white hair had grown even longer, with blood-red tips, and the monster was hunched over, walking on its knuckles like a gorilla. So, Deku, do you have anything to report, armed and prepared? He asked. Bakugo looked back in shock as Izuku retorted, it's a Nomu with about as many quirks as All for One, built for the purpose of killing Deku. He also killed Dr. Garaki after being awakened. What? The doctor was killed by the damn freak. He yelled. Aku developed a big smile as black fluid seeped from the spaces between his pointed teeth, a look of madness that was aimed at the hero. But then Izuku heard a voice calling out to him. He realized that the new person in front of him was Deku, the doctor's only concern. What the? Kid, where have you come from? Izuku turned to see Atsuhiro and Shuichi prepared to move, the reptile man brandishing a katana, as the voice yelled. Kei-Kachan. Why have they come here? The heroes turned back to Aku as he started to laugh in a deep, menacing beast that slowly adjusted its body to stand upright, his laugh becoming unhinged as his sadistic gaze focused solely on Izuku. Bakugo moaned before explaining that he had discovered them interacting with Aku before he arrived to intercept him. Their fighting quickly caused the civilians to flee. With a distorted voice and a sideways cocked head, Aku said, So, you're Deku. You didn't waste your time finding me, hero. Izuku's eyes narrowed and he assumed a battle stance as more black fluid oozed from Aku's gums. Jaku Hospital under the supervision of the on-staff nurses, Ochaco left Tetsuo, Kazuto's frail brother, behind and hurried him back to Jaku Hospital for a checkup. The doctors kept Tetsuo in his own room while they conducted tests because of the rancid fluid that had soaked his body and the hero's explanation of his location. With concern in his eyes, Kazuto observed from his room's window. Ochaco gave the boy a quick head rub. It'll be okay, I promise. The doctors want to make sure your brother hasn't been affected by Garaki's experiments. If you ask me, he'll wake up in no time, she said as a means of comforting him. As she rushed back to Deku, Ochaco turned to a nurse and asked if she would watch him. The nurse replied, of course. Please be careful, Uravity. Ochaco advised Kazuto to follow the nurse's instructions and remain safe until the situation was resolved before taking off, adding that Izuku would want the same thing. Quietly, the boy nodded. He said, oh okay. After saying her goodbyes, Ochaco put on her headpiece and climbed out of a window using zero gravity. Now that she was outside, she soon noticed one of the numerous Aku nearby going on a wild rampage. Pinky, Mirko, and Froppy were fighting this copy. With a roar, Aku charged for Mirko, who retaliated with a quick kick to the jaw. She launched a flurry of blows before kicking him again to push him away. Froppy noticed Ochaco when he looked up. Uravity. Where's Deku? she exclaimed. Ochako moaned as she struggled to decide whether to join Izuku or assist her friends. Aku threw his right arm in Froppy's direction, stretching it before grabbing her. However, Ashido's acid splashed onto the arm, melting it quickly and releasing Froppy. "He's probably battling the original," exclaimed Ochako. Ashido raised his head in confusion. "Excuse me? There's more than one of this freak show?" she cried. The girls watched as Aku abruptly grew back its missing arm before roaring in agony. Mirko started cracking her knuckles and stretching her limbs, unfazed. With AKU's eyes narrowing, she declared confidently, "Fake or not, I'm gonna enjoy beating this asshole into the ground. I've been itching to get back in action for a while, and I'm not letting this pass me." Ochako nodded, said, "Tell Deku that, when we're done here, we'll join him. Make sure we get the coordinates first," and moved on. At Kamino Ward, Ground Zero, Izuku and Bakugo remained at Kamino Ward, staring down his original body as the city was engulfed by the violent lashings of AKU's multiple copies. With a look of pure madness in his eyes, black fluid oozing from his mouth, and a violent sense of bloodlust driving him, the monster gazed at Izuku. He licked his lips and said, "Izuku, Midoriya." Izuku let out a disgusted groan. "You said that crazy doctor was the maniac behind this? Explain it so I can understand, Deku." Bakugo responded. "This is Aku, a new breed of Nomu created from the fostering hatred he's collected from the League of Villains, built solely to kill me and fulfill his revenge. He originally was attempting to use Kazuto's missing brother as a host for it, before it turned on him. As for what quirks he has, he could have as many as all for one," he clarified. Atsuhiro and Shuichi gasped, and Bakugo moaned. "It what? When did that psychotic doctor get anything out of us?" exclaimed Atsuhiro. Shuichi gritted his teeth and narrowed his eyes. He clarified, "You don't remember? The doc wanted samples of our DNA for backup reasons, probably in case he wanted to experiment on us too. What I want to know is why this monstrosity dares to look like my deceased friend," he demanded, drawing his katana and pointing directly at Aku. With a sinister smile, the monster turned to face him. He laughed, savoring every word he said. "You can thank the doctor for that. He originally wanted me to bear similarities to his precious master, but decided to keep this form. Why? Maybe I have it so we could spat upon your leader for his failures." Shuichi growled and tightened his grip on his sword. "Don't you dare talk down Shigaraki's feats like you knew the guy. I won't allow," he yelled. Shuichi was still irritated by AKU's smile. "Deku said you killed your master after waking up, but I'm gonna take a shot and say you used him for your new host. Am I wrong?" Bakugo replied, prepared for action. After chuckling, Aku started to hawk up and spat out a shabby skull in the direction of their feet. Izuku shocked everyone by thinking the skull belonged to Dr. Garaki after just one glance. The hero squinted his eyes. Trying not to lose his cool, Izuku said, "What did you do?" Aku chuckled. Aku said, "Be thankful that I still have that around." The monster laughed proudly before Bakugo charged for him. "I may have needed the doctor's help, but we have become one far quicker than he expected. We fit each other perfectly. And now that I've consumed his life energy and feeble quirk, I can operate without him calling the shots. So what? You're gonna be nothing but splatters on the walls by the end of this. You don't scare me, asshole," Bakugo yelled, exploding violently in his face. Aku was forced backward by the blast, but Bakugo persisted in his assaults, pushing him farther back with each blow while grinning proudly. He yelled, "What's the matter? Where'd your big talk go? Or was that all you had?" and struck him with both hands in a double explosion. Aku lunged through the smoke and used his enormous hand to seize Bakugo. He lifted the hero into the air, his grip covering his mouth. Aku yelled, "You're not the one I want. Take a hike," and then effortlessly threw him at a building. Then he looked at Izuku. "But don't worry, when I'm done with this one, you'll get your turn," he exclaimed. Shuichi, however, charged next and slashed the monster's side with his sword. Aku screamed as the blade cut through his sludgy black body. Izuku yelled, "S-spinner, don't get too close to him." With each slash, Aku roared, "Sorry, Deku. But this bastard's gonna die by my hand." He then attacked again, saying, "For my friend's sake." He quickly recovered from each slash before snarling at Shuichi. Before it crashed down on Shuichi, he raised one hand and used a quirk to double its size. The reptile was left in the concrete, flat as a pancake. "Wait your turn, extras," yelled Aku. When he was preoccupied, Izuku leapt in his direction and delivered a powerful blow to his chest. It made Aku reel for a moment and was a big hit. Then, after a brief barrage of blows, he kicked him back. "You won't be hurting anyone else, Aku. You want me? Come get me," he yelled. Bakugo rushed in from behind and hit the monster's back with another blast. He threw himself overhead and kicked Aku in the face, saying, "Like hell you're fighting alone, Deku." He touched down beside Izuku. With crackles coming from his hands, he yelled, "Listen up, damn monster. You ain't getting your sludge hands on my friend." Izuku gave a small gasp. "Kei-Kachan," he uttered. As Shuichi stood up again to resume the battle, Aku snarled and looked around. Before launching several black tentacles from his midsection and slamming everyone but Izuku against a wall or the ground, he briefly knelt down. Bakugo ended up stuck to All Might's statue's base. He growled once more before lunging toward Izuku. "Now die, hero," he roared, his fingers growing into enormous claws. Aku grinned and launched a swift attack with his other hand, but Izuku was able to dodge the slash by boosting backwards in time. However, he barely avoided it because of Izuku's one-for-all reaction timing, but his hand had turned into a spiked mace and his side battlesuit was torn. Aku's mouth closed as flames spilled from his jaws before Izuku could gather himself. "A flamethrower!" he exclaimed. Iida lunged in and gave him a forceful knee to the side, stopping the beast in his tracks as his jaws opened, ready to fire. The monster stumbled and snarled viciously at Iida, throwing his flamethrower in a different direction. "Ingenium! You made it!" exclaimed Izuku. Iida faced him. "Midoriya, are you all right? Don't worry, our classmates should be coming to join the fight soon," said he. Aku gave off a deep, startled growl. "How? My doubles was to assure nobody interfered with my fun?" asked the man. Iida gave him a stern look. "Too bad for you, monster, that Japan has other pro-heroes that were ecstatic to take your fakes out. They've all but vanished because of our combined efforts," Iida roared. Aku snarled and then let out a loud roar that was abruptly followed by a strong sound shockwave. Aku had to cover his ears in pain because it was so loud. After Jiro and Kaminari arrived safely, she crippled the beast with her sound whooper. Then Kaminari started charging electricity between his palms, causing a marker to adhere to him. He yelled, "Supercharged voltage, 2 million-volt laser," as he fired. Aku howled in pain as the lightning settled in and overpowered him. Both of his friends gave Izuku the thumbs up as he turned back to face them. However, the attack only increased Aku's rage rather than paralyzing him. The two heroes let out a gasp. Kaminari exclaimed, "No way! He withstood that?" With a roar, Aku aimed a huge laser at the two with his jaws. The laser punched clean through the nearby building as Kaminari pushed her and himself out of the way, causing Jiro to gasp. "How many of you are gonna keep showing up?" the beast cried out. His gaze quickly returned to Izuku, but he was stopped by a distant cannon blast. Aku's legs were frozen in place by a sudden wave of ice, and Momo, who had just materialized the weapon, was the attacker. Izuku turned to see Shoto, Sato, and Koda appear. As more of Izuku's friends started to show up, Aku growled angrily. Before long, almost every student in Class 1A was standing by Izuku. When he perspired enough to blast them out of Aku's sludge, Bakugo and the former villains were also freed. "We already know you're after Midoriya, so we're not going to let you get your grimy hands anywhere near him. Get used to it," Shoto yelled, setting his other half on fire. At that moment, Ochako showed up and landed precisely beside Izuku. With his eyes on her, he said, "Ochako? Don't worry, Deku. I put word out to everyone else about Aku and the other pros arrived to help clear out the duplicates. It's just him and us now," she replied. They both grinned and gave each other a quick fist bump. He then glanced at everyone in his immediate vicinity before turning back to face the furious Aku. He made a fist and yelled, "Get the hint, Aku? If you want to kill one of us, you have to get through us all first. We're Class 1A of UA High School. We've fought our fair share of villains before you. And you'll fail just like the rest of them," Aku growled before yelling loudly, his voice sending a huge shockwave around him. He abruptly sprouted huge demonic wings and a whip-like tail from his rear, causing the ground to tremble for a brief moment. Venom dripped from his eyes as he glared at Izuku. "If that's what it takes, so be it. I'll slaughter every last one of you," he yelled. "Come at me, trash heroes." In order to avoid being in the path of Aku's rampage, residents of Kamino Ward fled to the hospital, which became a safe haven. Kazuto watched silently from the first-floor cafeteria as the lower floors quickly filled with people. After seeing his unconscious brother since Ochaco left, he was sitting at one of the tables in search of a change of scenery. He looked down at the can of soda in front of him. He whispered, "Mr. Deku. I hope you're okay." Kazuto raised his head with his arm and closed his eyes gradually. To his surprise, when he opened his eyes again, he found himself floating in a pitch-black void with no indications of Jaku Hospital or any nearby evacuated residents. As he screamed and called out for help, whether it was his brother or the nurses keeping watch, he looked around in a panic, wondering what was happening. But he got no responses, so all he had left were his mounting anxieties. But he saw someone floating toward him, so he wouldn't be alone for long. It was a man wearing long black pants and a gray t-shirt, with solid white hair. It was the residual spirit of Yoichi, the original one for all wielder. Kazuto yelled, Who are you? What's going on?" in an attempt to be heard. When they were near each other, Yoichi placed a hand on his shoulder and silently glanced back at him. Kazuto gasped and had a serious expression on his face. "There is not much time to talk, but the man who protected you, Izuku Midoriya, needs you, Kazuto. If you do not hurry, Midoriya will die," he murmured. Kazuto's eyes widened in terror as he started to picture a bloody Deku on the ground surrounded by his classmates in a similar manner, AKU's figure looming with a devilish expression of satisfaction. Abruptly blinking, Kazuto found himself back in the real world, still in Jaku Hospital. There was a huge explosion outside a window nearby, and then a column of smoke rose up. The massive battle was being covered by a news station on the cafeteria television. Both Yoichi's words and the picture of Izuku's bleeding body kept replaying in his mind. The boy acted on the warning and climbed out of the nearby window, landing on the grass just outside, even though he wanted to stay at the hospital for his brother's sake. To his surprise, however, Eri had just arrived with the other evacuees and saw him right away. "Kei Kazuto? What are you doing? Were you sneaking out?" she yelled. Kazuto moaned softly before recalling an earlier conversation in which Eri had described her quirk to him. With haste, the boy grabbed Eri's wrist. He yelled, Miss Eri, come with me," and looked up at her fearfully. "I don't know why. But I think Mr. Deku is going to die," Eri gasped in horror. What?" she questioned. "Ground Zero, Kamino Ward. The students of Class 1A used quirks and teamwork to put an end to the insane Nomu's destructive rampage. However, the beast was unable to be stopped due to his intense hatred and desire to kill Midoriya. He grabbed Tailman and Shuichi and threw them aside before being fired upon by Grape's numerous sticky balls. The balls were blasted away by AKU's roar and shockwave before he appeared to teleport and slugged him into a collapsed building. As she watched her classmate fly by, Pinky gasped. "Mineta!" she cried out. As soon as he saw her, Aku roared and began to grow spikes out of his back, which he then launched in her direction like guided missiles. In order to stop the attack before it could reach her, Pinky moved fast and released a concentrated spray of her acid. However, the hero screamed in agony as they rushed past her after Aku used the smoke as cover to blast her with a volley of red lasers. As the battle played out, a number of camera drones circled the field, projecting images to Toshinori and Dr. Takashi at UA Elevated. They watched in the principal's office with Nezu and the other teachers. Takashi exclaimed in horror, "That monster is something Dr. Garaki created?" Toshinori moaned as he kept a close eye on Izuku while his friends engaged in combat. He thought, "Midoriya, be careful." After laughing, the beast saw Red Riot and Sugarman double-teaming him out of the corner of his eye and punched him in the face. Kirishima yelled, "Let's do this, Sugarman," as Aku recoiled from their onslaught of blows. Aku dug his claws into the ground and snarled. His eyes glowed red during their assaults, paralyzing them both instantly before sending them flying with a tremendous gust. He fired another laser blast in their direction, but Yuga used his quirk to stop him midway. He was pinned during the struggle, making it easy for Ingenium to jump in and kick him in the jaw. Grape's balls threw Aku off balance, and he struggled to free himself before being wrapped in cellophane and glued down once more. Zero cried, "Okay, we got him," Mineta called, "You're up, Shoto." Aku turned to see the fire consuming the hero's left side. Shoto's fire grew more intense and eventually turned into a wildfire. He yelled, "Flash Fire Fist," and launched a concentrated assault. AKU's eyes grew wide while he was still restrained by the tape, and then the fire engulfed him entirely, the tape igniting and scorching his skin. He let out a loud scream and tried desperately to tear the tape off of him. Bakugo and Izuku observed from Shoto's side. "You got him, Shoto!" exclaimed Izuku. Burn him to ash, icy hot, yelled Bakugo. Aku stared at Shoto through the flames before they turned red and used his quirk to paralyze him once more. The fire went out as a result, and he had time to escape with a loud roar. Damn it, Shoto thought. With a malicious laugh, the monster unleashed a barrage of bullets at the others. He seized the opportunity to charge at Izuku while the others rushed to move aside. When Atsuhiro used his quirk to toss condensed debris he had gathered in Uravity's direction, he was stopped. She yelled, "Thank you." As she touched the pieces of debris, she hurled them directly at him after launching wires from her gauntlets and latching onto them as they started to float. It was, "Eat this," she cried. Before he could reach Izuku, Aku roared and clawed right through them, madness blazing in his eyes. But even though Bakugo was running to Izuku, a huge foot suddenly materialized and trampled on top of Aku. When they looked up, they saw Mount Lady looming over them, accompanied by Kamui Woods, Mirko, and Present Mike. Mount Lady!" cried Izuku. The hero started repeatedly stomping on Aku while grinning. "So this is the bug that needed stomping? Don't worry. I'll turn him into pulp," she exclaimed, causing the ground to tremble with each stomp. However, just as she was about to stomp again, Aku leapt out of the hole she had left and flashed his teeth. She gasped for a moment before Aku used all of his strength to bite her calf, causing venom to seep into the wounds. It was sufficient to make Mount Lady recoil and stumble back, causing the other heroes to jump off her. Kamui swiftly caught her and lowered her with his branches, causing her to shrink back to her normal size. Damn it, I can't feel my leg," she screamed, gripping her leg in agony. With his gaze fixed on her, Aku detached a swarm of blobs from his body and launched them in her direction. Each of them flashed their fangs. However, Present Mike let out an ear-shattering shriek toward the monster after Kamui Woods swiftly crushed them with his branches. Soon after, Earphone Jack joined in, amplifying the sound as their blows collided. Uravity rushed over to Mount Lady and examined her injury. The teeth marks had a deep purple glow. Ochaco yelled, "Does anyone know how to drain poison from a bite wound?" Momo made a venom pump in a flash and tossed it to her. Then she started to spawn metal rods from her arms and tossed them to a Tsukuyomi that was in the air. As Kaminari started charging electricity, Dark Shadow seized them and, with Tokiyami's help, formed a circle around the Nomu. Aku cast a bewildered glance around him. "Now, Charge Bolt!" Tokiyami ended the circle with a shout. With a nod, he sent out a tremendous electrical shock. Aku let out a loud cry as the rods, which served as lightning rods, contained the explosion. Kaminari yelled, "That's for trying to kill my girl, sludge face," and turned up the volume. Aku roared and pushed himself away from the layered attack with a growl, sending shockwaves that blew them away. Before launching another flamethrower from his jaws to cover the battlefield in flames, he grew larger than everyone else. As the heroes attempted to flee, Aku abruptly began to change once more, releasing tiny monsters that charged at them and devoured their corpses. Then, with a laugh, he sprang a long tail that was meant to push them away. However, Mirko swiftly caught the tail and used it to pull Aku in her direction before attacking him with a barrage of quick kicks to the face. She yelled, "Lunar Rush!" and kicked Aku far away. However, the assaults continued when he was unexpectedly struck by a big piece of concrete, which broke apart as soon as it touched his head. Cementos and, to the team's surprise, Death Arms, who had just arrived on the scene, worked together to launch the attack. "No way. Is that you, Death Arms?" exclaimed Kamui. The hero smiled. "Heard you guys were in a bind, so I rushed to offer a little backup," he yelled. Before approaching from behind and embracing the Nomu with his enormous arms, he threw the remaining concrete, shattering it even more when he struck Aku. Simultaneously, Anima called forth a flock of birds and dispatched them to launch sweeping attacks against Aku. It made it possible for other heroes to attack him with their own moves, even though they were hardly hurt. Aku glared at Izuku while becoming even more enraged by the battering. "Must kill Midoriya," he thought, his eyes going crimson. He struggled and managed to escape Death Arms' hold, piercing him from behind with rivet. "Death Arms!" exclaimed Kamui and Mount Lady. As various limbs and other parts started to form and separate from his person, Aku let out an ear-piercing shriek. A horde of new doubles emerged from every blob of black sludge that broke off him. In unison, they all let out shrieks. "More clones!" exclaimed Mineta. Aku and Izuku made eye contact right away. He bellowed, "Enough! We settle this now, Midoriya." While he made a mad dash for Deku, he gave the others instructions to keep his friends occupied. However, Shoto abruptly threw a wall of ice in front of Deku, and Aku struck it head-on. He cried, "Not happening." With a growl, the beast bulked up, turned his right arm into a machine gun, and started shooting at Shoto. Before the Nomu began smashing away at the ice in a blind rage, he was driven away. Ochako and Asui attempted to assist, but the doubles attacked them and stopped them. Shuichi was attacked as well, but he managed to dodge it and cut the fake in half for a brief moment before lunging towards Aku. Behind him, the fake reassembled itself. Izuku yelled, "Shuichi! No, get away!" However, Shuichi continued and intensified his subsequent attack using scale mail and body bulk, 2 more quirks. He swung his sword directly at Aku's throat. "This is for Shigaraki, demon!" bellowed the lizard. However, the creature sidestepped and knocked his weapon away before grabbing Shuichi by the neck. He roared, "Be gone!" and used one of his own quirks to stifle it until Shuichi returned to normal. Before being blasted away by a close-range laser blast, the lizard man gasped. Then, using all of his strength, Aku delivered a final blow that broke through Shoto's ice. When he saw Izuku, the hero, moaning, his red eyes flashed. He yelled, "You want me, Aku? Fine. But leave them alone." With a roar, Aku readied himself for another assault. However, a single bullet flew by and struck him in the wrist, abruptly severing his right hand. With a roar, Aku retreated. Lady Nagant was using airwalk in her rifle arm when he and Izuku followed its trail. As she prepared another shot, she said, "Sorry for making you wait, Midoriya. I'm here to give back up." Aku growled and roared at her. Hawks caught wind of what was going down and asked me to come support. "Another one? Stay out of my way," he yelled, shooting lasers in her direction and sprouting several branches. However, Nagant only needed to avoid airwalk. He sprang for Nagant, taking her by surprise before she sprang back and shot him, grinning as her bullet hit his chest. However, it was short-lived as he launched a counterattack, piercing her flesh with rivets. After that, she was viciously flung aside and left to fall to the ground. "Lady Nagant!" exclaimed Izuku. Aku grinned evilly and made a beeline for him when he saw that no one stood in his way. Observing, Izuku prepared himself. "No more running, Deku. Now die!" the beast bellowed. His heels dug into the ground, and he used the strength of his battlesuit to grab Aku's hands and hold him back. Eri and Kazuto eventually showed up in the background, but they quickly fled as Izuku and Aku hurried by. "Mr. Deku!" yelled Eri. Before Izuku was able to push Aku away and kick his side, the two titans were engaged in combat. The two now exchanged a flurry of punches as he skidded backwards and charged for Izuku. In the middle of it all, Aku laughed demonically. Together with the other pro-heroes, his friends were compelled to watch as Aku's clones doubled and pinned them for the most part. Holding him against the ground, Bakugo yelled, "Damn it, get off me!" Laughing, the imposter grabbed his head and threw him face first. Eri and Kazuto shivered in silence as they watched in horror. What is that thing? What's going on?" Eri exclaimed, tears welling up in her eyes. Kazuto's obsession with Izuku persisted. What can I do? No way can I help Deku. Did that phantom call me here just to watch?" he was thinking. Abruptly, Aku punched Deku in the stomach, causing blood to fly from his mouth. Izuku was thrown backward by another bullet punch and collided with debris. "Midoriya!" cried Iida. Aku continued to stare at the pile of debris as everyone fell silent. The hero was able to emerge and charged towards Aku, slamming his side into him. Then he tied Aku up and threw him into a building using tools that resembled his old quirks. The Nomu returned with ease but lost sight of Izuku due to an unexpected smokescreen. He thought, "Good, looks like he can't find me no," before a barrage of lightspeed laser blasts suddenly attacked, shattering portions of his armor. "How?" Izuku asked himself. With a laugh, Aku ran after him, trying to impale him with the horns that grew from his head. One pierced Izuku's side despite his ability to avoid it. Before the Nomu grabbed him and essentially beat him to the ground like a rag doll, he screamed in pain. Then he was propelled into the air, met in mid-air by a forceful leap, and forcefully crashed back down. Ochako cried out, "Izuku!" in an attempt to interrupt and offer assistance. But Aku's double interrupted her, giving her a cruel look. Ochako was furious at the sight of its face. "Get away from him, you bastard!" she yelled. The double responded to her yell by electrifying its fists and launching a vicious barrage of attacks at her. Izuku, meanwhile, continued to fight in spite of the beatings he had received. He thought, no, I can't Lose, as he tried to match Aku in another barrage of blows. He could feel his strength diminishing with each blow of their fists. This resulted from the Nomu siphoning off his power with a quirk. If he's let loose on Japan, everybody will die. I can't let that happen, thought he. His cheeks started to flush as he suddenly saw Aku getting ready for another attack. Izuku tried to get out of the way, sensing it was a laser or flamethrower. However, Rivets was abruptly shot out, using the earlier assault as a bluff to frighten him. The hero was dragged back to him after they stabbed him, causing him to cough up blood. Then, grabbing him by the ankles and wrists, Aku lifted him above the ground and drove him down on his knee. Izuku almost suffered a broken spine in the impact, and the hero screamed. Seeing their friend turned into a punching bag was too much for the others to bear. Then he threw Izuku violently into a building while laughing. It crashed down on him due to shockwaves from the powerful impact. Midoriya! Exclaimed everyone. Eri and Kazuto watched from the sides in complete horror, neither of them able to articulate what they were thinking. With an evil smile on his face, Aku watched as the dust gradually settled. Ojiro questioned, Ichi's gonna get back up, right? But he's quirkless now, and his armor looked seriously thrashed. Hagakure continued. Momo watched from beneath another Aku clone's heel. We poured all our time and money into helping Midoriya. But Garaki's monster broke it like it was nothing, she murmured. To everyone's surprise, Izuku struggled and managed to push off the bricks and debris that were on top of him as he emerged. Only a small portion of his battlesuit remained, revealing his flesh and human body. His breathing was labored, his muscles ached, and blood trickled down his face, arms, and other wounds. He made an effort to maintain his battle stance, but even he was having trouble staying balanced as his nerves and vision failed him. Aku laughed uncontrollably at the severely injured hero. The Nomu pointed a finger at Izuku and yelled, "That is all you can do? Was it truly this easy to reduce you to a bloody mess? Pathetic. I barely used any of my more violent quirks even. You're just a joke. You were never in my league. You are nothing," Izuku moaned, struggling to maintain his vision. "No, not in this place, not right now. My friends still require me. I'm not going to fall, not when I'm needed by everyone." After inhaling deeply, Izuku yelled back at Aku. Aku laughed and yelled, "Shut up, I'm NNGH. Not done yet. As long as I can stand and keep smiling, I won't lose." The Nomu said, "Oh, that's good, and here I thought you'd need a little motivation to keep going." Izuku furrowed his brow, perplexed by what he had heard. At that moment, Ochako's agonized scream startled the others and pulled the hero from his daze. "You Uraraka?" inquired Izuku. Those nearby witnessed her being engulfed by the double before she abruptly materialized in Aku's grasp, her head twitching in pain as he raised her. Izuku was mortally horrified at the sight of her battered body. Then, enjoying the blood he had drawn from her, Aku laughed and licked her face. She used what little strength she had to squint an eye open and look back at Izuku. Not only was her hero costume covered in tears, blood, and bruises, but she also appeared to have experienced actual hell. Deku, help me. Tears were welling up in the hero's eyes as he watched in horror, his confidence completely crushed. He soon experienced an internal switch flip that he hadn't experienced since he sacrificed everything to save Bakugo from the sludge villain. As he continued to gaze at Uraraka's suffering and Aku's sick pleasure, a feeling of blind rage grew stronger and stronger. He growled and, without realizing it, black crackles of electricity surged off him, as if One for All was responding to his intense hatred. Aku sneered and used the sight of Ochako's body to entice him closer, causing his fists to clench. "Yoou," Izuku snarled, his growl almost feral. Everything else in his immediate environment quickly faded away, including his past emotions, other senses, wounds he had previously sustained, and even his friends' yelling voices. Banjo's comment about monitoring his heart briefly crossed his mind, but it was quickly disregarded. He surprised Aku for a moment by moving at nearly unhuman speeds. The hero was suddenly within striking distance of Aku's chest. Izuku yelled, "Let her go," and swung his fists at the Nomu. However, even though it hit him squarely in the chest, Aku didn't even flinch. In fact, as he stumbled backwards afterwards, it seemed to rekindle the pain he had previously experienced. Aku's berserker state vanished, his cowardly face from middle school grew, and he was completely destroyed by the reality that he didn't even flinch. After chuckling, Aku tossed Ochako's body aside. As he was charging the blast, his hand started to change once more, turning into a razor-toothed blaster and slamming it into his chest. Izuku's eyes were focused on the attack, but the monsters were filled with pure joy. Aku chuckled, "Farewell, loser hero." A blood-red blast pierced through him with ease, and his friends and fellow heroes watched in horror, all yelling Izuku's name. His internal organs were totally destroyed by the blast, and the light in his eyes was extinguished before his lifeless body flew backward and collided with the debris. Toshinori's mouth dropped open and his eyes widened as wide as they could as he watched events unfold on camera. The other teachers, including Nezu, were equally ashamed. His body trembling, he muttered, "No, Midoriya. No." His abrupt scream startled everyone as he fell to his knees. Aku's laugh turned vicious and sadistic at the sight of Izuku's dead body. Ochaco, who was lucky not to witness it, struggled to sit up as he laughed. However, that didn't prepare her for the traumatic scene that was in front of her. Her mind instantly went blank, just like Izuku's, and she had a dejected expression. Her lips were quivering and her eyebrows were twitching as she cried waves of tears. As her memories of him started to flood her mind at a dizzying rate, her tears fell and landed on her clenched hands. Like pictures thrown into a fire, the memories in her mind started to burn away from the edges. He said to her at the class reunion, and those were the last words she heard reverberating. "Ochaco Uraraka, I love you." Ochaco screamed as loudly as her vocal cords would allow, but reality utterly destroyed her. Despite the injuries she had sustained, she was able to move again with ease, just like Izuku. Her entire world seemed to collapse from the expression in her eyes. "Izuku!" She cried as she ran in his direction, tears streaming down her face. After finishing Izuku, the Nomu did nothing but watch the injured hero go by before slowly turning to face the other members of Class 1A, who were now nothing more than lambs for the slaughter. The others were unable to move as his overwhelming lust overcame them. Even Shoto and Bakugo were frightened by its aura, which was now on a different level from that of Stain or even All for One. He asked in a sadistic manner, "Now then. WHO wants to go next." Ochaco's wounds eventually caught up with her, and she soon fell at Izuku's side, fighting for a moment to be nearer while her eyes were watering. In the hopes that some sign of life would respond, she lifted his body and started shaking violently. "Izuku? Izuku? Wake up! Please! Please! Wake up, Izuku!" she cried, her absolute desperation taking precedence over all other feelings. She was breathing erratically and in a panic, hoping he would respond. Her friends, including Momo and Mina, looked away in regret as they watched in disgust. "Ochaco!" Sui mumbled, her eyes welling with tears. Eri was unable to bear it any longer and rushed to Izuku's body from a distance, leaving Kazuto alone and terrified. He was so preoccupied with Izuku's lifeless body that he hadn't even noticed her fleeing. "No, this can't be real, right?" Kazuto thought. "He can't be dead. He can't be." Ochaco gasped as she went to work, putting her hands on Izuku's chest and turning on rewind in a desperate attempt to bring him back to life. "Eri?" inquired Ochaco. Eri tried to stop her quirk from spreading, but she saw a sickening black aura eating away at the edges of his wound. However, Eri persisted and started devoting all of her energy to her output, fighting back her own tears as her horn shone brightly. "Mr. Deku. Hang on, I won't let you die, I won't," she cried. When Aku heard her voice, he froze in place and turned to face her. His savage smile wavered, and then he turned back to them. "Tell me. Just. What are you doing, little maggot?" he exclaimed, frightening the others and Eri. Bakugo snarled and attempted to move, but Aku's double stopped him. Ashido cried out, "No, stay away from her," and tried to strike, but was stopped. "Don't even think about it," said Shinso. Mineta made an unsuccessful attempt to escape. "Don't you dare touch Eri. Do you hear me?" Yuga continued. But Aku was so focused on Eri that none of their voices seemed to reach him. The sudden flash of a bright light from close by was the only thing that did. He turned to see the light coming from Kazuto's body, and like the other heroes, he gasped. Kazuto's eyes were full of tears, but they were also filled with pure fury over his hero's passing. Angry, he muttered, I can't accept this." The boy gritted his teeth and started growling, his muscles tensing as if he were about to fight. As all of this was going on, white lightning crackled and glowing markings wound their way around his body, all of which pointed to a one-for-all reawakening. The changes he saw caused Aku to gasp. Kazuto's white, shaggy hair started to stand on end, each strand radiating a blonde hue. The Nomu whispered, what is that? The boy gave Aku a fierce look and then let out a loud scream that shook everything around him. Shiro said, why you guys seeing this? Is that Kazuto? Mineta went on saying. Ochako was among those who could not believe what they were seeing when Eri went back to attempting to assist Izuku. Aku was completely taken aback by what was happening in front of him. The boy looked directly at him, his eyes glistening blue and filled with tears, leaving him speechless. He yelled, you're not getting away with this. I won't, violently. The boy rushed toward him at the speed of light without making a sound, then struck Aku in the stomach with a forceful headbutt. The blow was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was easily comparable to All Might's 100% smash, sending his body hurtling backward and colliding with a building's base. The other students in Class 1A were staring at the furious child in complete shock. What was that? Aku moaned as she got up from the debris. Amidst all of this, Izuku abruptly woke up in the same emptiness where he had last visited the former One for All wielders. However, he appeared in it as his younger self, silently gazing down at his body while his mouth and body were covered in black smoke. Unaware of his location, he glanced around until he heard a voice. So, this is how the hero known as Deku chooses to let his life end. TCH. How lame. Izuku turned abruptly and gasped upon seeing Shigaraki's diminutive figure staring back at him. However, in contrast to his previous appearance, he looked as he did when he was Tenko Shimura, before All for One corrupted him. Seeing Kazuto effortlessly send Aku's real body flying with a single attack, the other heroes and Aku doubles were rendered silent as the radiant glow of One for All shimmered from his child body. Bakugo was the most surprised by this. Bakugo muttered, no way. Some members of Class 1A and the other pro-heroes, including Toshinori, watched from the drones, their mouths hanging open. What the heck is the kid doing here? Shinso exclaimed as he lay among the debris. Unable to take his eyes off Kazuto, Shoto struggled to stand up. Shoto questioned, that light, isn't that One for All? The same angry, almost ferocious look Izuku had given him during the sports festival finals caused him to gasp a little at that moment. He even felt the same overwhelming feelings radiating outward. Why yeah. That has to be. But, why does Kazuto have it? Replied Ashido. Bakugo sat up straight and retorted, don't you dolts remember? Deku. Let the doctors perform a blood transfusion. The damn idiot gave his blood to save the kid from dying. That must have been like All Might giving the quirk to him. Now. He's got it. Aku, still recovering from the wound he had received in Kazuto's attack, looked on in confusion and bewilderment. He snarled, his eyes twitching. What in the world was that? He thought. That was the most damage I've felt in this entire battle, and the doctor wanted me to kill Deku? He must have been a senile fool. He gasped at that moment. Wait. That cannot be the case, he thought, unless what Garaki wanted me to destroy. Was this amazing power? Yes. That's much easier to comprehend. In that case. He growled, flashing his red claws as a black aura similar to Kazuto's light flared around him. As Ochako watched from the sidelines, she couldn't help but remember how Izuku had saved her during the UA entrance exams by using One for All. Kazuto exuded a similar aura in her imagination. As Eri gave Rewind her all in an attempt to bring him back to life, she cast a quick glance at his lifeless body. She thought, Deku? Did you know this would happen? She started reminiscing about Izuku's resolve to save the child from his near-death experience, as evidenced by his facial expression. In the same way that All Might permitted him to inherit it, One for All's rite of passage, was this moment, just prior to the procedure. Aku flashed his claws abruptly. I don't know who you are or where you came from, child. But, for you to surprise attack me like that. You die, he yelled. Even though he got close fast, the boy evaded his blow and punched him in the stomach instead. Aku's eyes bulged from his head as he reeled in pain from the impact once more. Aku stumbled back a little before glaring at Kazuto, their angry expressions reflecting one another. Kazuto swiftly delivered an uppercut to the Nomu's jaw as he roared and prepared a counterattack. Kazuto suddenly launched another high-speed attack, saying, I won't forgive you. You think killing others is a game? Let's see how you like it when I reduce you to a puddle. Within the otherworld, the child-sized Tenko Shimura was greeting young Midoriya, who was still floating in limbo as the real-world battle went on. His mouth was covered in a black haze that prevented him from speaking. Do you really want to end things this way, Midoriya? You let one of the doctor's monsters kill you after all the suffering I caused you, After I injured so many of your loved ones, after our fierce battle rocked Japan to its core? Izuku managed to regain control of his voice and responded to Tenko's lingering ghost after sufficiently scratching away at the haze. With determined eyes, he answered, "Oh, of course I don't. I gave everything I could to save you from succumbing to All for One's control. But, I could hardly damage Aku with the way I am now." Tenko, however, sighed. "What you really mean, in my opinion, is that, even though you have altered how people view people with and without quirks, you readily accepted death without One for All by your side. You're so pathetic." "That was then, Tenko. The embers of One for All are gone. You think I could have beaten Aku the way I am now? How could I face my friends again, if I let them do most of the work?" He cried out. "Would you have been okay if you let your allies in the league do the fighting for you while you reaped the rewards?" Tenko walked away. "Isn't that the way the majority of people you refer to as villains think? That level of stoop is easily reached by those who wish to achieve their goals without making the necessary effort. However, I believe that even after destroying your own quirk, you, the #1 hero of Japan, would still accomplish amazing feats. However, I suppose that in reality, you were unhappy that you were forced to use support course technology rather than a quirk like your friends. Recognize it. Instead of discarding it, you wish you could have kept one for everyone." Izuku gasped, unable to respond to Tenko. He recalled his days as a UA teacher before All Might gave him the suit, the loneliness that grew inside of him, and how he happily accepted his position even though he wanted to do more with them. Then he remembered how completely hopeless he felt when his suit was destroyed and he was unable to hurt Aku. "Maybe, you're right. Deep down, I wished I could have continued supporting my friends and helping others as a pro. But, I simply accepted that what I did was more than enough for an entire lifetime. I won't lie that, when I used my battlesuit, it brought back memories of my time with One for All. Despite the good I was doing, it somehow felt hollow," he replied. With a small laugh, Tenko turned back to face Shigaraki, just as he had when he first met him, albeit without his costume. Simultaneously, he unintentionally transformed into the person he was when he applied for UA alongside Bakugo. "You did, in fact, admit it. And here I thought that even though it was eating away at you, you would just shrug it off and smile. I remember that Midoriya." Tenko kept speaking in his own voice, but with Shigaraki's tone, even though he was now in his Shigaraki persona. Izuku clenched his hand into a fist and looked down at it. "But, there's nothing I can do now. I want to keep fighting. But how can I when my life was taken from me?" asked the man. Tenko just shrugged. "I'm not sure. Why don't you check out what happened to Bakugo, your friend? While the other pro heroes worked non-stop to repair and restart his heart, he was exactly where you are now, on the verge of death. The boy you saved is now that rabid Nomu's next opponent, and that girl, Eri, is using all of her strength in her quirk to bring you back to life right now, assuming you are unaware of what has transpired since then." As his body lay in a bloody mess, Izuku gasped, imagining what was happening in the real world. "Kazuto's here. And so is Eri. But, how?" he demanded. At that moment, Tenko's side revealed Yoichi's spectral form. "Izuku, it was me. I guided him to your side with every ounce of strength I possessed. You might not be aware, but One for All is about to change in ways that nobody could have predicted. But for the time being, you have to quickly return to your friend's side and put Aku and Dr. Garaki's animosity aside." Before guiding him toward a bright light in the distance and the door leading back to his actual body, both specters took one of his hands. Izuku remained silent but voluntarily followed them, understanding that his inquiries would have to wait. However, as the three of them ascended toward the light, several black tentacles unexpectedly emerged from the emptiness beneath them, accompanied by the resounding, furious cries of Dr. Garaki. Glancing back, he saw the head of Dr. Garaki emerge from the darkness, half fused with the mangled remnants of All for One's faceless face. It screamed at him, its razor-sharp teeth gleaming from its lips. "Midoriya, you must die." What in the?" exclaimed Izuku. With a groan, Tenko handed Izuku to Yoichi and stood between them and the famished ghost of Garaki. Tenko launched a counterattack, easily shattering and deflecting the tentacles as they homed in on Midoriya. "Midoriya, that is the root of Dr. Garaki's animosity. It will continue to eat away at your wounds and stop Eri from assisting you unless you can resist its will and get back to your physical body." But what about Tenko? I can't just leave him behind like this," Izuku responded. Abruptly, a second tentacle snapped out, slipped past Tenko, and grabbed Midoriya's leg. Others quickly followed, and once it was wrapped around his ankle, it started pulling him back. In an attempt to set Midoriya free, Tenko swiftly applied decay to each tentacle. However, as more lashed out to replace what had been erased, each felt like a negligible difference. Oh no, Doctor. You have to be such a pain, even in the afterlife? TCH. At least I get to punish you for your part in ruining my life now? With a demonic roar, Garaki's spirit formed more tentacles to attack Tenko, flinching each time one vanished. However, they soon clung to Midoriya's body so tightly that Yoichi's strength was insufficient to keep him under control. While being pulled back toward Garaki's mouth, Izuku lost his hold and continued to fight for his freedom. He turned to look behind him as the hideous ghost approached. Dee! Izuku, still fighting the tentacles, cried out, Let me go. You can't keep me here, my friends are waiting for me. But as Tenko and Yoichi watched in disbelief as he got close enough to be flung into its mouth, a brilliant ball of light materialized and raced toward Izuku. The light suddenly broke through the tentacles with a single blow, and as he turned to look back, a well-known heroic voice echoed. Izuku was hurled into the air as Garaki's ghost reeled in pain. Smash Detroit! Izuku saw his childhood hero, All Might, waiting for him with a radiant smile on his face as the tentacles around him vanished. He swiftly grew into his UA and caught Midoriya while he was in his muscle form. Clothing for students. A All Might? Izuku exclaimed, appearing completely perplexed. Ha ha! Young Midoriya, this is where you've been. Fear not, now you're secure. Why? Hee. By now, you ought to understand why. Because I am here. When Izuku saw his hero in his prime once more, his face brightened and he started crying with happiness. However, All Might sent Izuku back to Yoichi as soon as they were reunited, just in time to block another of Garaki's tentacles. Later, more rose to attack Midoriya, but they were swiftly defeated when the former One for All wielders appeared out of nowhere, each shouting an attack name from All Might. Nanashimura, N. Banjo, Hikage, Bruce, and Kudo were among the people Izuku saw flying by. After every attack, they all gave Midoriya a self-assured smile and encouraged him to keep going. Everyone, Izuku exclaimed, pausing for a moment before saying, thank you. Garaki's ghost let out a loud scream as he launched a flurry of piercing black spears directly at him. They were about to close in, however, when a glowing figure sped past him at breakneck speed and destroyed them with a single blow. Texas Bullet. They were all broken by the impact, and the pieces flew back at Garaki. Izuku didn't recognize the figure until he heard it speak because of how quickly it moved. To Midoriya's surprise, the light surrounding the newcomer vanished, revealing an elderly Kazuto in his own hero costume. His primary costume was a long flowing red cape that fluttered in the wind. It was patterned after his original costume, but it was solid white with American flag-inspired color splashes and a visor over his eyes. The aura of One for All crackled around him, and the tips of his white hair glowed a bright gold, just as he was right now. Izuku exclaimed, Is that Kazuto? Before Yoichi caught him, he gave a slight nod. The future of Kazuto, your successor, the 10th, is what you see, just as All Might saw greatness in you. Izuku watched in awe as the boy he had just rescued grew into a hero of his own, leaving him speechless and profoundly moved. In an attempt to stifle Garaki's rage, teenage Kazuto glanced back at him, grinning like All Might and waving briefly before charging forward with Tenko and the other One for All wielders. Izuku was able to make Tenko one last time from a distance, but he had matured into the Shigaraki he encountered in the war's conclusion. Abruptly, a light shot out of his hand, was hurled at Midoriya, and entered his body. The shadows below grew smaller as they got farther away, and he and Yoichi kept moving toward the light. Yoichi launched Izuku the remaining distance using his own strength as he approached the exit. Yoichi smiled back at him as he looked back, aged to his present self. He was the original wielder, though, and this time the radical surge of One for All shone brightly off him. Izuku Midoriya, realize that your story is far from complete, even though you have fulfilled One for All's initial goal. A brand new version of One for All that you created yourself is now beating inside of you and just waiting to be unlocked. Even though I have no idea what the future holds for you, I have no doubt that you and your friends will keep helping those in need. My brother and I never had the opportunity to experience the new evolution in society that you are now paving the way for quirks. Remember that a single man cannot alter the course of events on his own. Izuku looked up at the sky, seeing his loved ones calling his name and reaching out to touch him. Grinning, he reached back and grasped Ochaco's hand before vanishing from view. Now that he was gone, Yoichi returned his attention to Garaki's ferocious rage and the other One for All wielders who were preventing him. His eyes flashed momentarily as he focused his strength into his left hand. I'm going to go now, plus ultra, the actual world. As his army of duplicates pinned down the others, Kazuto was still engaged in a furious altercation with Aku when they returned to Kamino Ward. Both displayed signs of weariness, and Kazuto had been putting up with the Nomu's attacks while his emotions were running high. After witnessing the battle, Ochaco and Eri were unaware that the darkness-consuming Midoriya's wound had vanished and that Rewind was starting to mend his heart and patch the hole left by AKU's attack. As it happened, One for All's radiant light started to manifest itself on him. The girls looked back at the same moment as Izuku's eyes flashed open. They both gasped at the sight of him turning around and started crying because they were so happy and relieved. He whispered, Ochaco. Eri. I'm sorry to make you worry. With tears streaming down their faces, Ochaco forced a smile as Eri, her horn now much smaller than before, gave Izuku a quick, tearful hug. The fighting suddenly stopped when they heard the commotion, and everyone, including Aku, turned to watch him. Midoriya, Iida exclaimed, utterly astounded. Kamui and Mount Lady both gasped at the same time, and Mirko also became silent. Kirishima stammered, no way. Are my eyes playing tricks on me, or? Even though neither Bakugo nor Shoto understood what was going on, they both grinned when they saw Izuku get back up on his feet with Ochaco's help. Bakugo muttered, about time. Damn nerd. He resolutely maintained his position while Aku watched in complete shock and disbelief, looking more perplexed than the others. He just saw the man he killed rise from the dead and stand again. His little twitches showed how his bubbling sense of hate started to build up. And no. This can't be right. I blasted a hole right through you. Midoriya. You should be dead, you little shit. The Nomu yelled. His gaze suddenly turned to Eri as he realized that he had forgotten all about her because of his battle with Kazuto. The monster snarled in a tone that begged for blood, his teeth piercing the air. It was you, wasn't it? He yelled, frightening Eri. He was about to strike her when Izuku suddenly erupted in power, immobilizing him. Its overwhelming presence made it impossible for him to move or carry out his attack. He felt as though he was being pushed back. Then he became aware of the crackling light all around him. At the same time, after witnessing his hero rise from the dead, Kazuto's aura started to diminish. Cheers were now forming, and with it, his sense of blind rage was waning. The boy muttered, Deku. With a new fire burning in his eyes and an overwhelming surge of raw power forming a multicolored light that shone off him, Izuku clenched his fist and turned to face the Nomu as Aku growled. He startled Aku for a moment by pointing his fist at him. Aku, your spree of destruction ends here. It's time you felt what it's like to feel helpless, before someone more powerful than you. Now, get ready, he yelled as he assumed a combat stance. Izuku returned to the fight with a fresh sense of bravery and resolve even though he was on the verge of death. He stared down Aku, the flame of One for All rekindled within him. The Nomu growled, snarling. His army of copies, all of whom were glaring at Izuku, conveyed his emotions as well. The hero was silent as he glimpsed the light emanating from him. Both the overwhelming power emanating from him and the light radiating off him were comparable to the levels displayed when he battled All for One. Izuku looked at both of his hands and muttered, I never thought I'd feel this way again. He was mildly surprised when he heard his friends cheering. Shiro exclaimed, go get him, Midoriya. And Jiro and Kaminari cheered. The reply from Tokiyami was, you've got this. Sato, Mineta, and even Shinso sighed in relief as Ashido and Hagakure let out excited screams. With a smile on her face despite the tears still streaming down her face, Ochaco stood proudly behind him. She sniffed and wiped away her tears, saying, Deku. Izuku's attention was restored when Aku, who was still boiling with rage, started laughing. With a sly smile, he muttered, so, you managed to claw your way back from death. Hey, I suppose I underestimated you, hero. But so what, if I did it once, I can do it again all too easily. The Nomu groaned as Izuku's eyes narrowed and he exerted a surge of power. Aku gave a slight growl before regaining his sense of superiority. You don't get it, Aku. You won't be getting that second chance. Izuku responded, you've already caused enough destruction to a country that is still in its infancy of change. The fact that you failed to kill me the first time, should be proof enough that you are out of your league. His copies gathered around him, snickering. Do you really think you can stop me and my armada of quirks from leveling the entire country? The original asked, oh really? And what makes you think you can stop me? Izuku started to charge his power, allowing one for all to spread throughout his entire body. Pebbles and debris trembled as the ground started to tremble. Aku's friends watched with renewed ferocity as his eyes narrowed at what he saw. I know I can, and it doesn't take a genius to understand why. As my master once said, it's because I am here. Izuku exclaimed, calling out All Might's well-known lines while letting his quirk flare. The Nomu merely smiled before launching his doubles into an assault with a quick glance. The distance was rapidly reduced as they all moved at the same amazing speed as him. However, Izuku maintained his composure before launching a lightning-fast punch that instantly destroyed the victim's head. As the decapitated double abruptly spat into black sludge, Aku and the other doubles watched in complete horror. The other heroes watched in disbelief. W with a single punch. Shoji exclaimed. Midoriya, exclaimed Kamui Woods. At that moment, Izuku delivered another powerful blow to another clone before they could respond. With his fist piercing its slimy body, he targeted its stomach this time. The others fled as it writhed in pain and then exploded as well. Even Aku was shocked and couldn't believe what had happened. Impossible, wondered Aku. Izuku took a slow look at the remaining clones before they resumed their assault, comforted by their sheer numbers. However, all it took was a single yell and a sudden burst of energy to drive them away, sending each of the doubles hurtling backward. Yes, said Shoto. Bakugo smiled boldly as Eri came to his side to offer consolation. That's the Deku I remember. Hey, guess Takeshi's research was worth it after all. He reflected. Takashi and the others marveled at Izuku's strength as they watched from the observation drones nearby. His name was even being cheered and applauded by some. It looks as if your hypothesis about how to reawaken One for All was impeccable. I know Midoriya would be thanking you right now. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Takashi? Nezu responded, now perched on his shoulder. To the principal's humble surprise, the doctor shook his head. No, in all my years of studying the evolution of quirks, I can't take credit for what we're witnessing now. I believe, what truly revived the fire of One for All, is something I'll never understand. It was all his efforts alone. He replied with trust. In the meantime, Toshinori grinned while observing in silence. Young Midoriya, look at you. He thought, you've far surpassed this old man, even rekindling the amazing power of One for All. There truly is nothing left for me to teach you. I'm so proud of you, my protege. Izuku returned to the fight, glancing briefly at each of Aku's remaining doubles before abruptly disappearing. Aku appeared startled before he saw a flash of green light fly by. When he turned around, he saw another person abruptly split in two by a quick kick. Izuku had no remorse for the creature's demise and not a trace of fear in his eyes. He's so fast, exclaimed Hagakure. Even Iida was in disbelief as he assisted the injured Kamui Woods in standing up. He grinned to himself and thought, Midoriya, you're incredible. Midoriya destroyed all of Aku's doubles with a single blow each, his movements occurring at almost the speed of light. After that, he reverted to the original and launched an unexpected assault, striking him in the stomach with a massive blow. The impact was even more painful than when Kazuto hit, and the Nomu reeled completely, eyes wide and mouth gaping. Just as quickly, Izuku pulled his fist away, causing Aku to stagger backwards while gripping his stomach. Abruptly, the Nomu rolled over to throw up. Eri was healing her an MT. Lady, and Mirko smiled from the sidelines. She confidently remarked, looks like all you did was wake up a slumbering monster yourself, damn Nomu. Ochaco watched Eri's movements as the young girl used rewind to heal each member of Class 1A and the other heroes. Before going on to the next, she only used enough energy to let them move comfortably. With a demonic growl and blind anger in his eyes, Aku coughed up the last of his upchuck and turned back to face Midoriya. He was kneeling in front of him, and all he could see in his eyes was a look of utter confidence and ruthless strength. His thoughts clouded by the same hatred as Dr. Garaki, he thought, no. This isn't right. I had this pathetic hero dead. He did not have this power before. Was he messing with me? I joked to him. Izuku's calm glare only fueled his rage, and he bulged up and enlarged his left hand, swinging with all his might before Izuku stopped him with one hand. Izuku said, just give up. Aku let out a loud growl before he noticed a strange light that was starting to eradicate his enlarged fist from the hero's touch. It worked like Shigaraki's decay, slowly chipping it away. The sight made Aku retreat in fear as he watched the light continue to dematerialize him. In desperation, he chomped off his hand around the wrist to stop it, and his old hand vanished as another respawned from the flesh wound. What the heck was that? The others, some of whom were rubbing their eyes to confirm that what they were seeing was real, were also in disbelief. That was Shigaraki's decay, wasn't it? Ochako asked, and Izuku turned to face her, nodding to her astonishment before turning back to Aku. The Nomu and everyone else who could see him were startled when Shigaraki's ghost materialized next to him. Even Shuichi and Atsuhiro had a fleeting glimpse of Shigaraki. In the hopes that Garaki's spirit would hear, he said, "It's a new addition to One for All, a gift from the man you manipulated. However, in contrast to its prior destructive capabilities, it only erases malice itself. That implies that you are not as indestructible as you would like to think, Aku. Everybody has some sort of weakness." With his teeth clenched and his anger seething, the Nomu snarled. "Stop talking." The beast roared and started to pump himself up again, bulking his entire body until he was twice All Might's height. His long tail and a set of demonic wings grew from his backside, allowing the aura of his full power to wash over the battlefield. Deku did not flinch, but the realization hit the others hard, making Mineta and Yuga instantly terrified. "Not at all. He was merely playing around with us." Momo trembled. Yuga was terrified, and he sensed an aura similar to All for One's. Despite the overwhelming feeling, Ochako continued to look at Izuku. Aku laughed with pride, his voice deeper than before. "Now, what are your thoughts? Help, I haven't even used all of the medications that the doctor prescribed. However, someone as wonderful as you is undoubtedly worth it. I'm going to be the new one." Glow-and red hex circles suddenly emerged from his wings and unleashed a wave of fireballs that were focused on Izuku. Izuku responded by firing a volley of air-shot blasts from his fingers. One of them hit its target and put out the flames, but Aku laughed once more as the same hex circle surrounded the hero's feet. "Deku, watch out!" Ochako cried out as a huge pillar of fire shot upward from below, seemingly engulfing Deku. However, Izuku had already deflected the blow, whooshing past Aku as Black Whip wrapped itself around his hip and was pulled in his direction. "What?" the Nomu roared, launching a wave of his spike missiles and fireballs at him, but even that couldn't stop him as Izuku sprang forward and slugged him across the face with a kick boost. Blood flew from Aku's lips upon impact, but his eyes stayed fixed on Izuku. Aku gasped before Black Whip threw him higher into the air with a single pull, and Midoriya then tailed after him. "I informed you," Izuku retorted, "you're not getting a second chance." Aku glared back, his anger rising once more. Now that they were close to one another, they launched a barrage of blows at each other, with Aku staying in midair with his wings and Midoriya flying due to Float's return. Short shockwaves were felt each time their blows made contact. "Yes," Ojiro muttered, "he really isn't holding back." Izuku broke the stalemate before he vanished from view, using a combination of gearshift and FA Jin to quickly kick Aku far away. He stopped himself in midair before launching a barrage of rivet stabs from his hands, but Izuku's shockwave of another smash, supercharged by stored FA Jin energy, easily shattered them. Due to the upgraded form of decay at work, Aku had to quickly deal with the parts of him that were vanishing because of their fists. After he did, he quickly turned around. "Do you find this funny? Avoid mocking me." Aku roared and unleashed a variety of different quirks that were all directed at Izuku, but he was able to get past them all with the help of Danger Sense and Smokescreen. The more Izuku outshined him, the more enraged Aku became, and he then used a quirk from Nine's arsenal to spawn large black snake-like dragons from his back. Izuku appeared vaguely surprised as they gathered on him and launched an attack, but he was able to escape by launching himself backwards with a flick of his finger. This was exactly what the Nomu was waiting for, as he released a concentrated laser blast from his finger. Aku gasped before he was quickly struck, flying into a building and smashing through it. "All right, our Midoriya is that," Kirishima cried out. "Midoriya, continue," Iida and Momo exclaimed as Bakugo hammered his fists together, producing a miniature explosion. "Deku, trash this dude." Shoto glanced at Bakugo and grinned as he roared. It dawned on him, never thought I'd see the day Bakugo would be rooting for Midoriya. Then Aku appeared, charging at Izuku as quickly as he could. What the fuck?" Izuku muttered, and the others gasped as the Nomu quickly grabbed onto him with his arms and legs. "Hold on a minute, that move, is he attempting the same thing that Endeavor did?" Shinso gasped, and Aku laughed before climbing higher with Izuku until they were high in the sky overlooking the city. His body began to pulse, and as he gazed at Izuku with dementia in his eyes, his pitch-black skin gave off reddish glows. "So, After I punched a hole in your chest, you were able to return. When there is nothing left of you, let's see you pull that same stunt. I'm going to blow myself up. I will at least take you with me if I am unable to rule this world." Izuku gasped as he laughed uncontrollably. As though, Izuku struggled against his hold and managed to throw him off with all of his strength before he grabbed him by the arm and threw him as hard as he could to the ground. However, the Nomu saw an opening and regrew his demonic blast hand, charging another blast while magnifying it as much as he could. It grew until it was easily comparable in size to the enormous laser all-for-one used. "I'm over you. Either way, you're going to die." Blood-red light radiated from beneath him as it charged, and Aku laughed savagely. Midoriya, I declare," Tokiyami said. "Get out of there." Jiro cried out, her near-death experience still vivid in her mind, but Aku had not seen Izuku's expression stay composed because of how far away he was. "You were only brought into this world to kill, and this has been going on for far too long. If only Dr. Garaki had given you a conscience, you would have understood the true meaning of good and evil, but I suppose that, with his hatred for me, that never occurred to him. At least this isn't like Tenko, and I have no qualms about destroying you." Izuku closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the levels of One for All rising. He imagined that each of One for All's former wielders looked at him before extending a hand, and that once All Might passed him, his classmates and other friends greeted him in a similar manner. As this was going on, his hands started to radiate a golden glow, which Aku noticed. The same glow enveloped Midoriya's entire body before a sudden surge, exerted the moment his eyes, left the Nomu momentarily stunned. "Izuku Midoriya, just die!" Aku screamed, firing his massive laser. At the same time, Izuku and the others counterattacked with their own move. Then, with the help of the other One for All wielders, Aku was hit by a barrage of titanic-sized punches, the same attack he used to finish Overhaul. While it only took a good 5 of the giant fists to completely decimate Aku's blast and even destroy the blaster itself, the rest of them completely destroyed what confidence the Nomu had left. His face was filled with fear, resembling the last face Garaki made before he died. Although they came at him quickly and appeared to phase through, their damage soon accumulated as parts of his body began to break off him in chunks. He lost both arms, legs, and a good portion of his demonic wings, and he screamed in agony as the glowing decay started to affect him. "No, no, this is not possible." The heroes on the ground watched in disbelief as Izuku charged straight for him, directing all of his strength into his drawn-back fist, joined once more by the other wielders, and then they came together and delivered another titanic punch. Aku thought. One huge impact sent him hurtling towards the ground before crashing down on his backside, the impact leaving him paralyzed in place. "We must leave this place," Kamui yelled, dragging Mt. Lady away with him. Class 1A all screamed as they frantically ran out of the way, trying their hardest to evade the impending attack. Ochaco turned around and gasped when she saw that Kazuto had not moved from his position but had just watched in complete silence, his eyes sparkling with wonder at Deku's bravery. "You're really awesome, mister," he muttered. Deku and Ochaco rushed over to take him in her arms. As they started to run away once more, Kazuto turned to face Ochaco, who was grinning back. "I understand, correct?" The titanic-sized fists were drawing closer and closer to the immobile Aku, who was now vulnerable to Midoriya's attack, as she asked softly. "Shining Hope Smash. One for All, plus Ultra." Aku let out a violent, ear-piercing scream as everything became nothing more than a blur to him. His sludge-like flesh began to peel off him, exposing his brittle skeleton, his brief life flashing before his eyes. Before completely evaporating with the light, his eyes flared with blind rage once more at Izuku before crumbling away with him. Once the giant fist made contact with the ground, it created a massive fissure and shockwave, constantly pressing down on the Nomu. "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, Izuku Midoriya. Ha at t." These were his final thoughts before the attack overwhelmed him and his entire body disintegrated as the giant punch exploded in a brilliant burst of light, but neither the surroundings nor his friends were harmed. Some even jumped to the ground to avoid the shock. After the dust settled and the overwhelming shine disappeared, all that remained was a giant fist-shaped crater, and Midoriya safely touched down where Aku disappeared. The other heroes were left completely stunned, the reality of the situation washing over them that Izuku had won and that Aku was gone. The immense light from One for All also began to calm down, reducing to a mere outline around him, while the ghosts of its former wielders vanished peacefully. I hope you and Dr. Garaki will meet up with all for one in the afterlife, Aku. Goodbye. Everything fell silent as Izuku slowly rose to his feet, feeling the warmth of Yoichi and the others rushing through his veins. He clenched his fist and raised it into the sky, striking All Might's famous pose whenever he won, completely forgetting the others were nearby. Kazuto was still in complete awe, with Ochako kneeling at his side when he set him down. His eyes exerted the same level of sheer amazement as a younger Izuku Midoriya did when he rewatched his favorite All Might clips. He then slowly looked down at his hand, remembering how he was overcome by his emotions. Is that the definition of what it means to be a hero? He muttered, recalling the moment he rescued the other child. Bakugo, who was nearby, noticed Izuku posing and grinned, shaking his head and laughing softly. He said, "Show off, Izuku," Ochako yelled, startling Izuku before sprinting in his direction. Izuku turned to face him and threw herself against him, giving him a tight hug while tears streamed down her face. He staggered back a little, totally taken aback by her abrupt embrace. He turned to face her, listening to her sniffles and soft sobs, grinning to himself before giving her a hug in return. What followed were the cheers and screams of triumph and excitement from his classmates and other heroes. "No problem, Midoriya, you succeeded," Hagakure cried out. "At last, it's over," Mineta shouted, pumping his fist alongside Kaminari and Shiro. When Kaminari joined in later, Jiro moaned in shame and covered her face with her hand. "Dude, that was way beyond manly. You were amazing." With his arms folded and dark shadow perched on his shoulder, Tokiyami watched as Kirishima yelled. Tokiyami continued, "I never had a doubt." Shoto nodded silently, and the other pro-heroes, including the resurrected Lady Nagant, started cheering him on. Unbeknownst to him, news reporters and cameras started to assemble at the scene to cover the brutal battle. The intensity of his battle with Aku also put out the sea of flames and shone the sun back on the now destroyed Kamino Ward. The rest of Class 1A gathered around him, continuing their applause. "Dude, how did your quirk become reactive? I was almost afraid it would never return," Sato inquired. "Yes, Midoriya, you need to share your thoughts with us," Ojiro continued. "It might be what Dr. Takeshi was working so hard for." Izuku gave them a silent glance before turning to face his hand, which was still embracing Ochako. He said, "I don't know if I can honestly answer that. Even at my lowest point, all I could think about was that I had to protect the people I cared about. I had to keep my house safe and prevent Aku from winning." He glanced at the others, most of whom seemed a little confused or unable to follow his rambling, and blushed slightly, looking flustered. "And, I suppose, it helped that, in the short time I was on the verge of death, I felt I overcame an internal struggle I never knew existed. Well, I'll try to clarify it later," he said. "Right now, I'm completely." With signs of exhaustion, Ochako then shocked everyone by kissing him without warning. Bakugo merely smirked with his arms crossed, Ashido simply overcame with joy and giddy jumps, Jiro blushed slightly, feeling happy for her. Kazuto watched from a distance, grinning, but he kept silent and wiped his eyes. To his surprise, however, Izuku looked in his direction before coming down to his eye level and offering Kazuto his hand. "I appreciate you saving the day when I was out. I apologize that you had to endure such a trying time alone. However, hey," Kazuto gasped as he recalled the time he had saved him at the hospital. "I guess we're even now. Wait, you were aware that I was present the entire time?" How? Izuku laughed as he saw Yoichi's ghost behind him before he disappeared. Yoichi had nodded slightly and placed his hand on the boy's back when he asked. He laughed and said, "Let's say, a friend that still dwells within one for all, told me help was on the way." Kazuto quickly realized who he meant, recounting his visions of Yoichi's spirit in his head. He watched as Izuku extended his hand to thank him, not knowing how to react and crying a little more before returning the gesture. Suddenly, he was drawn into Izuku's arms and hugged the young boy, feeling warm and loving as if it were his birth father. "Kazuto, this has been on my mind for some time. However, I've already made up my mind after what you showed us. I'm scared to let you know that this won't be the last time you see me." He surprised Kazuto by saying, "The same goes for your brother, Tetsuo, as well. Before he took me under his wing, All Might told me I could become a hero because I had something most others at the time didn't. And that was the ability to quickly seek assistance, despite the fact that I used to be a quirkless person. He showed me that even people who are born without quirks can become peacekeepers. When he heard those words, more tears welled up in his eyes and eventually trickled down his face. They can rise to do great things, and they can become heroes in their own right. Mr. Izuku, what do you mean? I believe you mean, he whimpered as he resisted the impulse to begin sobbing. I would like to extend that same hand to you and Tetsuo if you don't mind, Kazuto. If you don't mind, I would like to help you reach your full potential as a teacher in addition to being your new father. Could I do that? Izuku's face was buried against Kazuto's chest as he asked softly, shivering with joy and sobbing uncontrollably. Many thanks, Dad, he whispered. They continued to embrace for a while before Izuku noticed Ochaco approaching and got back up, holding his hands with one finger off while grinning broadly. Deka, Izuku, that is, I truly believed that I had lost you. If you had actually died, could you possibly imagine how I would have felt? What do you have to say for yourself, you reckless dummy? She said, reprimanding him a little but maintaining her usual upbeat tone. Mina and Izuku both laughed lightly when they realized she was repeating her insult. I sincerely apologize, Ochaco. But you helped give me the boost I needed to respark one for all, he said, recalling the moment Aku proudly displayed her battered body and his spiral into blind rage. I didn't want to lose you either. Without someone as special as you in my life, this would not have been possible. You were the light that kept me going. And I will always remember your voice. I truly meant what I said at the party. I love you. Everyone fell silent, and the two were staring at each other with teary eyes. Then, Ochaco opened a compartment in her headpiece and showed him the ring he had given her. The others gasped as she slowly put it back on her finger, and Izuku took both of her hands again with a gentle smile on her face. Would you, Ochaco Uraraka, stay by my side, so that we can work together and keep improving the world? Without you, I'm not sure what I'd do, he asked without hesitation, and that's the truth. Ochaco nodded as more tears began to form without responding. Why yes, Izuku Midoriya, she sniffled, I will. They then gave each other the tightest hug possible, their heads pressed together as Kazuto wiped away his tears, realizing he was also getting a new mother. As soon as things started to settle down for him, everyone erupted in cheers and applause, congratulating the two. However, Izuku's usual expression of awkwardness returned, including his face turning bright red, for a brief moment before Ochaco's bright smile silenced it. His friends quickly noticed, though, and they began laughing. Oh, dude, don't look so shocked. You truly meant everything you said. Hagakure and Ashido squealed with delight, grabbing each other's hands and jumping up and down as Shiro declared. Shoto laughed, followed by Kamui and the other pro-heroes. Lady Nagant joined in the laughter, covering her lips and turning her head away as she laughed at Midoriya. You two are so cute. The ideal pair, Kota yelled, and Hagakure gave him an unseen thumbs up. If I've ever heard one, that sounded like a marriage proposal. Correct, folks, Kaminari joined, and Jiro nodded, saying she could tell too. Izuku's face lit up red as his friends, including Eri, continued to cheer and playfully mock him. At that moment, he saw Ochaco staring at him with the same bright red face, the teasing making her blush from embarrassment as well, and they looked at each other before joining in the laughter as well. From a distance, Bakugo remained silent and grinned until Mineta gave him a sly look. Hey, to his annoyance, Mineta asked slyly, hey, Bakugo. What? I'll blast you to ash, foolish grape, if you're going to ask me that. Bakugo asked, sparks flickering in his hand, and Mineta merely averted his gaze and waved his finger, unintentionally infuriating Bakugo even more. No, I'm curious how it feels to lose to Midoriya once more. Bakugo snarled louder as he went on. Jiro hooked up with Kaminari, Midoriya just confessed to Uraraka, and Shoto and Yaoyorozu were practically a thing by now. Tell me, Mr. Dyna Dork, how it feels to be in the loser league like me. Then, as if to make up for not having a girlfriend yet, Mineta burst out laughing hysterically. Bakugo growled like a rabid animal, his eyes flaming with blind rage, as bloodthirsty as a wild beast, and then he grabbed Mineta by the balls on his head and pulled him in close. Did you find that funny? Huh, are you a pervert? You waste human flesh, don't you make fun of me. Die, he roared. Kazuto yelled in utter shock before rushing to Izuku and Ochaco's side. Mineta screamed like a young child as he was swiftly engulfed in a massive explosion, shocking and surprising the others. Bakugo. What was the purpose of that? Are you crazy? Iida yelled. Bakugo gave him a fierce look over his shoulder. Four eyes, shut up. The little shit was coming. Did you even hear what he said to me? He cried. Kazuto trembled a little at Midoriya's side as the others rushed to calm Bakugo, who was occupied with using the battered miniature hero as a punching bag. Never. Create, he muttered, mentally noting, him. Mad. Got it. After a few days, following AKU's defeat, Izuku and Ochaco visited Tetsuo in the hospital on a regular basis, accompanied by Kazuto. At that point, Tetsuo had reawakened and turned back to face them as they entered his room, watching in disbelief at the sight of them on the first day of his awakening. Tetsuo muttered, trying not to cry, "K. Kazuto." The boy blushed slightly and grinned when he saw him. He grinned back, "I told you I'd find you, bro." As they all arrived at his side, Tetsuo was completely taken aback by the sight of Ochaco and Izuku. Wait, Kazuto, are they not both Deku and Uravity? They are professional heroes. He pointed at them and asked, his hand trembling. Kazuto turned to face him and laughed a little. Yeah, heroes are very popular with my brother. Izuku laughed as Kazuto explained, and he's a massive fanboy of yours, Dad. Tetsuo, who was even more shocked by what he heard, looked at Ochaco and was shocked by what he heard. Everything is fine, you heard right. Izuku nodded as she explained, Deku. I mean, Izuku and I are planning to adopt you both once you're discharged. Kazuto told me about your experiences. Fending for yourself the way you do must have been frightening. Don't worry, though, in addition to getting married, Ochaco and I intend to immediately adopt you and Kazuto into our family. Tetsuo, what do you think of that? With his hand resting atop his heads, he spoke. Tetsuo's eyes instantly filled with tears, which then trickled down like waterfalls. Kazuto grinned slightly, his heart warming at the sight of his brother's happy face in spite of the tears. You were such a whiner all the time. It has always been, he thought, but, right now, I'm really glad you're all right. Tetsuo, and, from the looks of things, our lives are about to take a huge turn for the better. He wiped away a tear of his own. The wedding of Deku and Uravity. I may have been a little worn out from my fight with Aku, but I really meant it when I told Ochaco that I wanted to be by her side, even if it didn't turn out that way. You won't believe how overwhelmed my mom was when I told her, and Ochaco even told me that her dad seemed to faint when she heard the news. However, we had the support of our families, as well as our friends and fellow pro heroes. As you can imagine, news of this would make headlines regardless of who reported on it. To ensure that we weren't overloaded with reporters and requests for interviews, the two of us agreed to hold the ceremony in private, inviting only those closest to us. This was also an extended offer to Kazuto and Tetsuo after his brother was released from the hospital. The days leading up to then was pure torture on my psyche, constantly finding time in my schedule to prepare and rehearse what to say with my friends and all might. Thankfully, that all helped when I finally saw Ochaco again in her wedding dress. The tuxedo and gown we were wearing were actually handcrafted gifts from Yaoyorozu, even staying in theme with the colors of our hero uniforms. But that was the last of my concerns as her beaming smile was all I could keep my eyes on. After the ceremony, we were given a special performance from Jiro and others, the band reunited from the school festival. If you asked me to recall the best part of it all, I'd have to say, it was the warm feeling I felt from kissing her. And it was probably the best moment of my entire life. Despite us withholding our feelings to put our goals and priorities first, it felt like we never really lost any time because of it. And it was thanks to others encouraging us that helped us learn an important life lesson: heroes never act alone. Now that we're a happily married couple with plenty of free time, we knew that we didn't want our family to experience situations like the Todorokis and Dobbies. As word spread, interest in her parents' construction company and the quirk counseling program only increased. If you ever get a chance to visit our home, you'll find a special framed photo from the wedding, Ochaco and me standing along what is frequently referred to as the final instance All Might managed to appear in his muscular form. The evolution of One for All. I frequently traveled to Jaku Hospital before and after our wedding at Dr. Takeshi's request, where I underwent a number of tests and examinations that led to an incredible realization about the reawakened One for All. What had once been an evolving power passed down through history was now a single flame itself, corely dependent on the strength of my resolve and will. Although this meant that it was now all one ability, it seemed to have mutated in a way that allowed me to use abilities similar to the original quirks of the earlier wielders. As for the new mutation of decay, gifted to me by Tenko Shimura during my time in Limbo, it was not a tool of destruction and could only be used to deteriorate feelings of malice and hatred in others. It was this power that guaranteed my victory of Aku, breaking down his seeds of dark feelings with each blow I dealt. As for the remains of the battlesuit I was gifted by my friends, it was reworked into a support tool thanks to a collaboration of UA High's support course students, the SHIELD family in America and even the Japanese government to be used in tandem with One for All. While this helped me rise in the popularity poll at incredible speeds, even overtaking Lemillion, the fact I can still use One for All to help others is all I really need in my life. I even received a postcard congratulating me for my #1 ranking from him, Tamaki and Nejiro. At the time, they were out of the country on hero work and made them unable to rush to help us when Aku attacked. But, in Mirio's own words, he wasn't that worried about us. Kazuto and Tetsuo's future. After Tetsuo was released from the hospital, Ochaco and I completed the necessary paperwork to adopt the brothers under our family name of Midoriya. Their new full names were Tetsuo Midoriya and Kazuto Midoriya, our adopted children, and my future students for the next era of heroes, even though I had not originally intended to pass One for All onto him when I offered myself for the blood transfusion. It was only a while later that we received a surprise visit from Timothy Agpar, a USA military commander we met after Star and Stripe, America's #1 pro, came to our aid. Word had reached the American government about Kazuto inheriting my quirk and he visited us with a request, asking for our approval to let Kazuto and Tetsuo enroll in a UA university being constructed in the United States. To our surprise, it appeared the events of the war with All for One in the League sparked interest in expanding the UA name to other countries. Principal Nezu was already working closely with investors and members from both the American government and United Nations to build the first new school in California. We were originally unsure about enrolling the boys in a school outside of Japan. But, to my surprise, Kazuto wanted to take this chance so that One for All would be able to offer its strength and protection to others in need, even if they were cries from overseas. From the perspective of myself and Mr. Agpar, it was also Japan's way of honoring Star and Stripe's legacy. When it came time for a regular family physical, I was shocked to discover that Kazuto's One for All genes had changed significantly from mine. Although it still gave him the amazing strength for which the quirk was known, as I had when I first started, it was less taxing on his developing body and he was not able to use the other quirks that had been passed down from the previous wielders. Dr. Takeshi even speculated that this was a new evolution that was unique to Kazuto, meaning that anything was possible. He kept refining the power. As for Tetsuo, things had taken a surprising and shocking direction that we didn't anticipate. Tetsuo's body had undergone tests under Dr. Garaki's supervision so that he could be a worthy host once Aku was ready. Dr. Takeshi later told me that, prior to meeting me and delving into the study of quirk evolution, he had been the doctor's understudy at Jaku Hospital. It was only because of a strain in their relationship and opinions that he was able to escape before he could be labeled an accomplice when word got out of his alliance to All for One. The three of us had plenty of time to visit him in the hospital and we gradually got to know one another. Yes, Tetsuo's body now had the quirk that represented the eternal nemesis to One for All, and All Might wasn't sure if this meant that the deceased symbol of fear's vestige resided within. However, there was a small bright spot in the news, as additional analysis revealed that Tetsuo's version of All for One was more like the copy 9 used. And although others would have talked me out of it, I went ahead and decided to teach the boys how to control and hone their new abilities so they would be prepared for their entry into the world of pro heroes. I am confident that with the right direction and enough preparation, they could achieve truly amazing things. Like you believed in me, All Might, I will believe in them.
So this was it for the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.